I'm not very techy. It's taking a minute to figure this stuff out. So,
Hey, I'm with you.
okay. So any questions before we start, or
Nope, I'm pretty much an open book, and you can ask me whatever, and I'll give you the best answer I got.
that's perfect. That's kind of where I go. So then, yeah, we'll just start out, and I'll do a little intro, and then we'll go into your life and maybe get some of those questions, or maybe not, and we'll just kind of see where it goes. Do you have a time limit, or are you
Pretty much, I'm good all day.
okay? Because I mean, I generally most of my episodes are like an hour to an hour and a half. Some of them done like
Hmm.
an hour and 45, but I just wanted to make sure. I'm like, if you have something you need to be done for, we'll make sure we're done by that time.
Yeah,
But
I mean, like I think my next actual appointment is 3, so
okay,
that'd be like 4 hours.
okay.
I have
I don't
trouble. Like,
foresee.
I don't know if there's an ideal time for podcasts. So, like,
Yeah,
when I'm doing my podcast, if it's rolling and we're having a good conversation, I just kind of go till something kind of fizzles.
yeah, that's pretty much what I like. I'm like, if we got stuff to talk about, we'll keep fucking talking. Why not?
Yeah.
So okay, well here we go. Brandon Carlisle here with Tough Enough Movement. Today we've got Chad Aichs. He's a powerlifting legend and coach now, and things like that. He's running his own podcast and running Courage for apparel and everything like that. So let's just start out. Let's just a little base of who you are and where you're at right now.
I'm just Chad. I have a background in powerlifting. I was one of the highest ranked, like best numbers in history back in the 2000s in powerlifting. Also competed in the Scottish Highland Games. I have a background of like a little bit of high school football throwing. I threw for a few years in college. But powerlifting, I found powerlifting at the age of like 28, I think, is when I actually started competing. But I've been lifting for almost 40 years now. And I don't really compete in powerlifting much anymore, but I'm still in it. I'm still writing. I still do my podcast. I still do other people's podcasts. Right now, I'm coaching a lot online and in person. Try to put out as much good content as I can because there's a lot of really poor content out there. And that's basically it. I mean, I suffered at my peak in lifting. I suffered a lot of severe depression. I have severe sleep problems, dealt with some suicidal stuff. And I ended up opening up about that when I was competing because like I wanted to help lifters, but I thought lifting is not just about the gym. There's so much more to it. And there's this balance between whatever sport you want to do in life, and all of these things connect. So thought, man, if I'm going to do this, like I should be 100% honest and out there, and I should talk about this too. And then when I started talking about that, I got a lot of really good responses. So to this day, I still have a passion for talking about like depression, mental health, and all of that stuff. And to me, it correlates to anything else that you're doing in your life.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I mean, that's kind of the reason I started this as well. And I went with the same thing. I'm like, if I'm going to talk about this stuff and open up this narrative, I need to be as honest about these things and how they've affected me and what I go through with them now and what I've gone through with them in the past. And so I think it's a great thing to do, especially for guys like you who are these just monster men that can lift crazy amounts of weights and have done all these feats. It's like to know that if somebody like that can struggle, it's okay. It happens to all of us. Like
Yeah.
it's nothing that should be tainted as bad or anything like that. So we'll
And I
just
think that
start
was
back
one
at
of
the
the things for me is that when I first opened up, everybody's like, I started getting all these great responses. And I thought I was going to lose all my sponsors. I thought my sponsors are going to read this and I'm done, man. And I got
yeah.
great responses from my sponsors. I got great responses from people. And it kind of dawned on me like, listen, I have the mental strength to do this. So I need to do this. Like, this is something like the universe or whatever allows me to do this. And I need to do this because I can. Like a lot of
Yep.
people can't come out and talk about this. And that was one of the surprising things to me is when I first came out, I had people that I would have had no idea. Like I thought these are people that I thought had all their shit together. And they come up and start telling me their story, which I've literally had people tell me, my spouse doesn't even know I deal with this. And I'm like, you're
Yeah.
kidding me. Like your partner for life doesn't know that you're dealing with this. And I started thinking back and looking at all the people, every time you hear somebody committed suicide, everybody's like, man, they seem so happy. Like, I don't understand why. And it's like, yeah, that's part of the problem is they couldn't let it out. And eventually it tore them up. And if they could just let it out, and if me coming out and talking about what I dealt with helps them to at the very least, helps them to go, I'm not the only one,
Yeah.
then it's worth it to me. Because that could be the trigger that helps them get through it.
Yeah. And I think they need to know that they can talk about these things and let it out so it doesn't build inside. But then they also
Mm-hmm.
need to figure out their best way of coping with it, because not everybody's the same. Everybody has different needs of how to get these things out and how to release them. And it's like we're all going to have a different thing that's going to help us, but you need to find that and admit that you have that happening first, though.
Mm-hmm. I think
So
that's very true because I've always found it kind of interesting that everybody I talk to, and once I got more open with it, like everybody's like, hey man, if you ever need to call me, call me. I'll be available whenever. And I'm like, but for me, that doesn't work. Like talking to other people doesn't really help me. Like for me, it's definitely related to my sleep issues. So getting some sleep helps, but like being out in nature and being alone and just having this place to go sit and think helps me more than anything. So I totally agree. Like everyone kind of has to find what's going to help them get through it.
yeah, and I think it's just a process of testing different things, and that's why I'm like the different range of guests I have, and you can see what they've done. It can give you an idea of where you can try different things and how, so you can figure out what it is that you need and what's going to be able to help you through whatever you're going through.
Definitely. I definitely agree with that.
Okay, so yeah, we'll just start back in the beginning. We'll just where you were born, and we'll kind of hit on highlights throughout your life of, and then also lows and everything like that, and kind of turning points and things like that. So where were you born, raised, kind of situation?
I was actually born in just outside St. Louis, Missouri. We moved around a little bit when I was a kid. By the time I was in middle school, we moved back to Missouri, and my dad pretty much kept me there through high school, so I could compete in sports and didn't have to change schools and stuff like that. It's pretty much my family's blue collar, hardworking. You take pride in working hard. You just deal with everything and you be tough, and that's where I grew up. I loved sports. Once I found lifting, I really loved lifting because I definitely had some anger issues, and lifting for me was a way to like I could be pissed off and mad as hell, go bench press till I couldn't lift my arms anymore, and I was just like, I feel better.
There we
And
go.
so that became a big thing for me in sports. I love competing in sports. I love challenging myself. So that became a big part of my life. I eventually moved back to Reno, Nevada, which is where I live now, because we moved here when I was a kid and I fell in love with the mountains and the area. And so when I graduated high school, I turned down I think I had one or two scholarships to like smaller colleges there. And I turned those down because I'm like, I want out of the Midwest and I want to go back to Nevada. And there's something about the mountains for me in the high desert that like the mountains are something for me to look at every day and know there's something bigger than me. And the desert's just that's my like home. Like I'm a bit born in the Midwest, but I love the desert. And at the time we had a really good coach at UNR, and we had Cami Kashmiri was one of the best discus throwers in the world was throwing there. So I thought, well, this makes sense to me. So I moved out here, threw for a couple of years, ended up, I had been struggling even in high school. I started getting this problems in my lower legs. Nobody could figure out what it was. And I mean, I had doctors from Mizzou and sports guys and chiropractors, and nobody could figure it out. And eventually when I moved out here, I started school to be a physical therapist and worked in physical therapy for a long time, became friends with a bunch of doctors, and finally found one doctor that's like, listen, I'm going to figure this out. So he started researching it on his own. And we found out I had compartment syndrome, chronic compartment syndrome. We had surgery, didn't work because the pressure in my lower legs was just way too high. And so I had to stop throwing, which was, I didn't last in college much longer without sports. Going
Yeah.
to school without sports was really tough for me. And I was still able to lift. So I kept lifting and kind of floundered for a few years till I actually moved to this small town on the other side of Nevada called Elko. And I was training at a local gym there. And two of the guys, Wade and Raul, they're like, hey, we have a bench press competition. We're doing this in a couple weeks. We want you to come. And I'm like, hell yeah, I want to see that, dude. That's awesome. I've always heard about powerlifting, but I didn't really know anything about it. And they're like, no, you're competing. And I'm like, you
You're
said
like,
it's in a couple weeks, right? And they're like, yeah. I go, I can't be ready in a couple weeks. They're like, trust me, you're ready. And I'm like, okay, fine. I guess I'm doing it. And I went in and I took like second place and had a blast. Showed me how much I missed competing. And so over the next couple of years, I had to change in jobs and I moved back to Reno. And finally I went, you know what? I think I could be pretty good at this sport. I don't know how good, but I think I could be pretty good. And that's when I just turned it on and fully dedicated myself to it and worked
yeah.
out I was pretty good at it.
Turns out I did pretty well. But so when you got into, I mean, you say that the gym helped with that anger. That's one of the things that I've always done as a coping, and it started really young. Was just same thing. I had these temper, I had this anger, and if I got in there and I was with the iron and I could just beat the shit out of myself, and I'd be like, okay, I'm good. I'm not gonna go cause any trouble. I'm not gonna make anything stupid as long as I do this. But then there are a lot of people that continue with that, where I did that as well, where I was like, the gym's my therapy, but if you're not working the issue out, and if you get done with that session and you still feel angry and you still feel upset, but you still think it's helping, like it's like you need to figure something else out, right?
Yeah, it's literally a band-aid on a shark bite.
Yeah. No, that's a good analogy. And that's just where I had gotten to, where I'm like, as long as I go in and do this, I'm gonna be okay. And then and then the depression had stocked up, and anxiety and all these other stressors, and I wasn't dealing with them. I was just like going into the gym and beating the shit out of myself all the time, thinking I'm okay, when I wasn't analyzing and I wasn't sitting down and looking and reflecting at those things. Is that something you had noticed had happened to you ever? Or?
That's actually a really interesting point. It's kind of like it's like if you have a teapot that has a little spout and you got it on the stove and you just keep pouring water in it. Eventually that thing's going to pop. And that's where we would go to the gym to deal with our problems, but our problems keep getting worse and it keeps filling us up. For me, this is where powerlifting, and I'm really big on thinking, and I'm really big on the fact that the gym is not, if you want to be successful in the gym, you have to consider everything else, because you don't actually get stronger in the gym. You get stronger when you recover outside the gym. The gym is nothing but stimulation of growth. You want to stimulate your body to grow, but then it grows outside the gym. So when I got into powerlifting, I kept kind of with my same way of training, which was in super high intensity, as much as I could train. I had it in my head, if anything, if I wasn't getting strong enough, I had to train more. If I wasn't getting big enough, I had to train more. It was always train more was the answer. And I think that's probably kind of from my blue collar upbringing. I'm going to outwork the problem. I'm going to do more. And more is not a bad concept, but what do you need to do more of? Eventually I got to the point where I decided I'm looking around this gym and I'm getting ideas and concepts, and I'm talking to the people in the gym, but you know what? None of these people are at the level I want to be. So why am I listening to these people? I need to go to the people that are where I want to be. And I was able to get into a seminar with leadfts.com, which is Dave Tate. And I had a really good first seminar with him, and he actually told me I could call him with questions. So there was one point where I learned better technique, I learned better programming, but me and my whole team kept running into this roadblock where we would just stagnate out. And then I'd have to back everybody off for a week or two. Then we'd start growing again. So I eventually called Dave Tate up, and that's something that's hard for me. I'm not really good at asking for help. But I was talking to him one time, and he's like, okay, well, what do you think you should do? And he has a way of leading you to your answer without telling you the answer. And I'm like, well, I've been thinking about this, and I think we're training too much, and we need more time to recover to grow. And he's like, okay, well, then why aren't you doing that? And that was like, oh, okay, bam, slap me in the face. All right. And I kind of thought about that, and I go, again, Chad, you're following what everyone else is saying instead of trusting what you think. But that kind of scared me. And I remember having a conversation with Dave about this. I'm like, Dave, if I don't go to the gym every day, like I might kill somebody. Like that's how I deal with my job. That's how I deal with people. That's like, I need to go to the gym every day. And that's my release. And he very simply said, well, do you want to keep using the gym as your release, or do you want to be one of the best in the world? And that was like this kind of epiphany point where I went, okay, I need to figure out why I need to go to the gym every day.
Yeah.
And what I did is I came up with, I didn't come up with it. I kind of expanded it from other people that I knew, but we were getting into recovery training sessions and GPP sessions, which are general physical preparedness. So I'm like, wait a minute, I can still go to the gym every day. I just can't train heavy every day. I go, so maybe that mentally, if I'm at least in the gym, even if I'm not training heavy, maybe that will help. And it did help a little bit. But in the end, the answer was I need to figure out why I have to train every day. And whatever causes those problems or causes me to have to do that, that's the shit I need to figure out.
Yeah.
And so powerlifting in a weird way led me down this path to turning inward and realizing and dealing with the reasons that I had to go to the gym every day.
Yeah. And that was able to help you succeed in powerlifting by grasping that concept and then listening to your body and then listening to other people of this is the way you need to train and these are the things you need to do to recover your best, right?
Yes.
So you can get to that point. Because I participated in powerlifting. I won't say I competed when I'm talking to a guy like you, but I had that same problem of I overtrained. I didn't realize it because I'm blue collar too. I was like, I can just outwork everything. That's what worked for me in high school sports. Like that's why I was able to get as far as I did in certain things was because I could outwork anybody and I could grunt through. And so I just would train. I'd get in there. I'm like, oh, I need to get this frustration out, but I wasn't working those other issues. So I just get in there and just beat the hell out of myself. And I have really high volume. And so it's like I plateaued at a point, and I have the same problem. I don't like to reach out for help. I don't like to ask people. I hate it. Like this has been getting out of my comfort zone on the podcast of asking people to come on. Like even that for me, I get anxiety about. Right. So I didn't do all those things. And I'm like, that would have been really nice if 10 years ago when I got into powerlifting, if I could have had a conversation with you then to be like, hey, dial it down. That's why you're not going anywhere. You're not recovering. Plus, I'm a grunt. I work hard labor. I'm doing 50, 60 hours of hard labor a week doing flooring, going into the gym 5, 6 times a week for 3-hour sessions where I'm getting that high levels. Like I was doing conjugate for a while where I do that, but then at the end, I just felt like I had to beat the shit out of myself at the end. And so it was like I was hindering all of that work I was putting in because I wasn't able to recover.
It's interesting because I'm exactly the same. I'm the same way too, especially when I first started my podcast, like asking people is really hard. And then they seem like really surprised and like, really? You want me to do it on your podcast? That'd be great. And I'm like, all right, that's not what I expected.
Yeah.
I wonder too, though, if like that blue collar mentality which has its place. I think there's a place where it's really good because we work hard, like we get the job done, and that's great. But I wonder if that attitude also doesn't help us stuff stuff down. Where it's like instead of us being smart enough to go, hey, wait a minute, this is how I'm dealing with my anger. Maybe I need to think of another way. You're like, no, just tough it out. Just keep going. Like, just do more. Just do more. Do more. Do more. And like that's a great concept. More. Like for me, it was going, wait a minute, I do need to do more, but I need to recover more. I need to get more sleep. I need to get better nutrition. I need to do more recovery work. I don't need to kill myself in the gym. I don't need more of that. I need more of recovery. And it was kind of flipping how I thought about the whole concept and whole idea.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing with my mental health is like, okay, wait a minute. I need to do something different with this. And this is not, I don't want people to think I just went, oh, hey, I'm going to change how I think. Like this
Yeah.
took years. And I was very hard headed about, I changed kind of not needing to be in the gym all the time, but at the same time, I was still pushing myself so hard and with my sleep problems to where the worst of my depression, the worst of my suicidal stuff, I look back now and go, I caused it because I pushed myself so hard. And even though I was better than most other lifters at the time I was competing against, I was still pushing way more than I should have.
Yeah.
And it wasn't kind of until getting to the point where there was a point where my team basically and my family sat me down and they go, Chad, you're not gonna make it if you don't stop. And so that's when we came up with the plan of, hey, let's do Highland Games for a year, little less training, weights and practice Highland Games, which kind of helped me a little bit. But I had pushed so hard at that point that it was tough. But that was all another learning thing to me too, because I really consider strength. It's not just the physical. I love the physical side of strength, but it's the mental side too. Even to get under 1,200 pounds and squat it, it's not the physical, it's the mental. Like you
Yeah.
got to get past the fact that if I get loose or if my ankle rolls or if anything happens, this is going to go bad, really bad. And you got to get past that and be 100% that you can do it. So to me, it's all always tied in together.
Yeah. No, I definitely think so. And then, I think one of the other hard parts about having that mentality of I can work through anything and I can push this out is that when you start having these negative emotions, I don't know if you had this, but this is what my head was when I'd start struggling with those things and I try to outwork it, then I'd get frustrated with myself of like, you fucking pussy. Like how are you feeling like this? Like just outwork it. You're doing fine. And then I get down on myself, which gets to depression in this loop of snowballing and getting worse and worse and worse because I can't outwork it. And I didn't know how to fix it. And it was just a frustrating thing for me, which made it worse and worse. And so I don't know if you feel the same way or do you?
No, this is interesting. This is why I like doing podcasts. I like doing my own podcast and like being on podcasts. I love thinking and I love when people say stuff that sparks ideas in my head. So the first thing that pops into my head is we've got to change what we think of as outworking or what we think of as working. So let's take the lifting thing again. I wrote an article one time called "Are you overtraining or under recovering?" So overtraining means you're training harder than you can recover. But there's things you can do to speed up your recovery. Are you really overtrained or are you just under recovered? Like, are you doing everything you can absolutely do to recover? Like a lot of people, especially some of my younger clients, they don't want to sleep and they think they can do just fine. And it's like, no, you're overtraining. So we're going to have to back your training off. But if you don't want to back your training off, then pick up your recovery.
Yeah.
So instead of going, oh, I'm trying to outwork this. Well, how are you trying to outwork it? By training harder Or are you trying to outwork it by getting more recovery? By
Yeah.
going, hey, I'm not eating enough. I need to eat more. Hey, I'm getting 5 hours of sleep. I need to get 8 hours of sleep. Like it, I think part of the blue collar problem is we look at work in physical terms. We don't look at work in mental terms. Like for me, I love going into the gym. I love just crazy. The crazier, the harder the session is, the more I enjoy it. So when people tell me, oh, I train so hard and I do this and that, and I go, big deal. Like training hard's easy. Like I love doing it. That's like telling me it's hard to eat a Snickers bar. Like
Yep.
it's not. I love it. Now, me getting the right amount of nutrition in and good nutrition during the day, me going, hey, I can't, well, I'm antisocial, so this isn't so hard for me, but if you go, hey, I know I can't go to that party tonight because I need to get my 8 hours of sleep, so I'm not going. That would be hard for most people. I mean, don't do what you love to do and tell me it's hard. Do the stuff you hate to do and tell me you're doing it. That is putting the work into me.
Yeah. I think
So
it's
I
getting
think
the
I think if we
education there.
flip how we look at it, that's going to be the big thing that's going to help trigger some change.
Yeah. Yeah. No, like where you look at the whole picture, like you're saying, working out's easy for you. So that's the easy part. The hard parts are dialing in the nutrition, getting the sleep, your hydration, like the other things get to the recovery. And I think a lot of people don't do that mentally as well. It's like they just think work through it, but they don't think there's other things around it that revolve there that you need to look at and kind of analyze and figure out how to do that and what things you're missing and what things you might not want to do that might help.
Yeah.
Like you said, walking away from a party or getting an extra 12 ounces of water or getting that extra 30 grams of protein. It's like those things are going to help you more than that last 30 minutes of dying in the gym, which is that's going to work more than going and working out to fix your mental health. There's something else you could do, like you said, going out in the mountains and being with yourself and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. Those are things that might be harder, might seem time consuming or different, but who knows if that's what's going to be the difference between a breaking point in 6 months where you are suicidal, or in 6 months you're in a much better place and life is a lot better because you did those things you didn't want to do or you were uncomfortable with.
Yeah. And trust me, the better your mentality is, the better your training's going to go.
Yeah.
So people would ask me, like, what's the hardest thing you ever did to get that strong? The 100% honest answer is training less. It's the hardest thing I ever did is back off of training and not train as much. So again, what was more work? Was it more work to keep training and train harder and train all the time? Or was it more work to actually back off of training, to go into the gym and go, okay, listen, I know I had a horrible day at work. I want to go to the gym and kill the weight, but I got to go in and lift really lightweight for really high reps because it's a recovery day.
Yeah.
It's way more work for me to go in and do that light stuff and control myself from going crazy. So again, what really is, what we say, that blue collar mentality, I want to work harder, I want to work harder. Okay, well, what's working harder? I mean, let's define working harder. What really is it? And
Yeah.
one of the other topics I wanted to go back to is so my sleep issues. Most of my life, I did not realize I had sleep issues. But once I started figuring it out, which I'll tell that story here in a second, I was able to look back and go, my sleep problem started in fifth grade. I have no idea why, but around fifth grade, I no longer could stay awake in class. Whether it was a class I liked, whether it was a teacher I liked, I would fall asleep. So from then on, all the way through college, it was wake up, go to the next class, try to pay attention, fall asleep. Wake up, like the whole time I'm asleep in class, it's waking up, but it happened the whole time through. And all of this time I'm thinking, well, I'm just a bitch. Like this is the way it is for everybody. Like everybody's awake all night. Like nighttime takes forever. And you wake up feeling like crap in the morning, and then you just nut up and you get your shit done. Like that's what I thought. I thought I just needed to get tougher. I had no idea people went to bed and woke up in the morning. Like that
Yeah.
concept to me is still utterly foreign. So even that I'm in college, I'm working physical therapy, like, and I'm exhausted all the time. Like I would have trouble if I used to like to do stuff with my patients. Like I'd rather take them out walking and test their balance and stuff. Cause when I had to sit them on a mat and go over exercises, I was fighting dozing off. It was hard. But I thought that was normal. I just need to toughen up. I need to toughen up. I need to quit being a bitch about it. And later I remember talking to my mom too. And my mom's like, yeah, I noticed you were tired all the time. And I kept asking the doctors and they're like, oh no, he's just growing. He's just growing. He's fine. He's just growing. And so I dealt with this. And when I was, my normal body weight's anywhere from like 220 to maybe 270. And I always fluctuated in between there until I started powerlifting. And when I started powerlifting, as you know, like I cut like 5 pounds to be at 275 in my first meet. And I went, man, that's stupid. There's a weight class where that's unlimited. I'm like, why am I doing this? So I started getting bigger. And at that time, the top guys that I met, it was like, dude, just get as strong as you possibly can. Like there wasn't as much of the health end of it. It was just get as big, as huge, and as crazy strong as you can get. So I started getting bigger. By the time I got to about 320, 330, I developed apnea. And at one point, I actually fell asleep at a stop sign. And I went, oh, I go, I'm going to hurt somebody. This is not good. I cannot do this. So I finally went to see a sleep doctor. We did a bunch of sleep studies. We got me on a CPAP, which helped with the apnea. But then we realized that I don't get deep sleep. Or I'm lucky if I get 10 minutes split up into a couple minute increments a night, that's good for me. So then we started doing all these other tests and we found out I had narcolepsy, not like just fall asleep narcolepsy, but because I don't do that, but where it just messes my sleep cycles up. So my body never knows when it's supposed to be awake or when it's supposed to be asleep. It could be the middle of the day and my body's going, yep, go to bed. Time to go to bed. And of course I can't. And then when I go to bed at night, my body's like, bing, hey, time to be up. You're supposed to be up. What are you doing laying down? And, they think it's the orexin. I think it's the orexin hormone or chemical that the body produces and the body fights it is their best guess on what causes it at this point.
Yeah.
So we find that out. I get on that's when I start going, well, wait a minute. Okay, this kind of makes sense now. And I started looking back at it. But like you said, it was just that whole, all right, well, you're tired. So what? Deal with it. Like move on.
Yeah.
Like that whole blue collar, like, my dad was a carpenter. My grandfather was a welder. My uncles are body men and mechanics. And you went to work. Like it didn't matter if you were sick. It didn't matter if it was raining. Like you got to earn money. Go earn money. Like you agreed to do this job. Now go do it. And that was really the mentality I had, even with my sleep. Like I never knew it was bad. I just thought that was everybody, and I had to toughen up.
Right, especially when you start at such a young age, you're just like, that's fucking normal, right? This is
Yeah,
what everybody deals with. Like, it's not like you're going through rooms. Hey, did you guys sleep last night? Like,
yeah.
how was it? You don't realize that. So I can see how that would be a hard thing to get through and past. Do you ever listen to Andrew Huberman or Gary
Yeah,
Breck at all?
yeah.
Have you
Not
ever tried any of that
regularly, but I
stuff? Or,
try to when I can. I listen to him.
because they talk about like their sleep and their morning cycles and then your circadian rhythm and everything like that and
Mm-hmm.
getting sunlight in the morning and everything like that. I just didn't know if you tried any of that stuff and seen if that
You name it, I've tried it
you
at
tried
some
it.
point.
You're like, something's got to help. But has that gotten better throughout the years? Or I know you still don't have, and then you said you used to have where you'd go through insomnia for days, but have you noticed a difference now compared to earlier years or?
It was probably still a little better in my early 20s, but I've gotten way better than what it was. Like I mean, I had the longest I was up was somewhere between 12 and 14 days. I can't really remember because things were getting pretty crazy right then. Um, I was regularly up for 2 or 3 days. Like that was normal for me to be awake for 2 or 3 days. At the time, I mean, I would try to lay down for a little bit and then I would be like, all right, screw this. And I'd pack up my camera gear and I would go downtown or go to one of the colleges. I really like doing photography at night because I could do some cool stuff with that. And then I would come home, shower, and go to work in 2 or 3 days. And then I might get one night where I kind of sleep a little bit. And, I've done competitions being awake for seven days and then go compete, which is really tough. So at this point, I've not even had one full night of insomnia in probably 4 or 5 years. The deep sleep is still an issue. I'm to the point now where every once in a while, my tracker will say that I got like 30 or 40 minutes. It's pretty rare. And I feel totally different with those. Like, I don't think people understand quality of sleep is every bit as important as amount of sleep.
Yeah.
So I think I was talking on the Elite FTS podcast. We were talking about that, and Dave was like, "Yeah." He goes, "I noticed. I started tracking it, and I noticed like I may get less sleep one night, but I get double the amount of deep sleep that I had, and I feel way better than the nights I get more sleep, but I get way less deep sleep." But I think people and the position of my life and what I've been through, I kind of see as a positive because it has allowed me to see things from a different perspective. So when I had my team, when I was competing at my highest level and I had my team, which ranged from 4 to maybe 6 guys at a time, I was able to track their sleep and know when they started overtraining. Because I would ask them, I got to the point where if you were on my team, you had to learn. You're not here just to gather information. You're here to learn. You're here to be part of the team. I expect everyone to act accordingly and to learn and to put their knowledge in and say their opinions. So I would teach everybody, and we would get to the point where when you would come into the gym, everybody kind of start asking you questions. Be like, "Hey, how's your appetite? Hey, how's your sleep been? You still doing your stretching? Are you still getting more flexible? Are you getting tighter?" And these are all questions of whether or not you're overtraining and how your body's recovering. What I noticed though was that most of my lifters, when they started to overtrain, their sleep would get very disrupted. And their sleep would turn into my good sleep, where they would be like, "Yeah, I went to bed last night and I fell asleep right away. And then I woke up like 5 minutes later." And then the rest of the night, they were like, "Man, every 10 or 20 minutes, I would wake up and I would wake up and roll over and wake up and roll over and wake up and roll over." They're like, "The night was so long and like I don't feel like I got much sleep at all." And I'd be like, "All right, you're deloading for the next week or until you sleep a night through."
Yeah.
I'd have them lift really light that week and they would still come into the gym to help everybody in the team because some guys wouldn't need to deload. So they're still training heavy. And then after a week, they would usually be like, "Yeah, man, I'm sleeping through the night again." And I go, "Perfect. Let's start training again. Pick it back up." And so it was an interesting for me to see that, wait a minute, overtraining seriously affects your sleep. Now, then as we go through it deeper and I'm watching people more and more and more, and I'm learning more about myself and I'm watching myself more, people often talk about mentality. I talk about mentality a lot, like your positivity, how there's this big discussion of motivation and discipline. And I think motivation is BS. If you can get motivation, sure, use it, but discipline is what's going to keep you on track.
Yeah.
And people are like, "How do you stay motivated? How do you stay disciplined?" And I go, "Get your sleep. You want your attitude and your mentality to change? Get a good solid 8 hours of sleep." Like, I think there's a lot of people out there that have struggle with mental issues, struggle with discipline, struggle with motivation, and most of them don't get good sleep. Get good sleep. I guarantee you will wake up in the morning and feel better. Almost to the point, I heard, who was it? I think it was Gregory. I can't remember his last name, but he said what he said. If you get up in the morning and you have to have coffee, you didn't get enough sleep. And I think there's a big statement to that. I think people, especially nowadays with phones, it's easy to not go to bed. Back in
Yep.
my day, like at a certain time at night, like TV was just done. Like they weren't broadcasting anything else. Nowadays, you can watch TV shows all night long. Like you can binge watch forever and you can always find something else to watch. And then you got your phone to scroll through on TikTok or Instagram, or like we have all these distractions nowadays. And if people would just go to bed, just get decent sleep, that I think they would be surprised how much easier it is to obtain your goals, how much easier it is to be positive, how much easier it is to control your emotions. Like you want to see somebody get super emotional, keep them up for a couple days. They'll flip out at every little thing after that.
Yeah.
Give them a good night of sleep and they'll get up and be like, whatever, I'm cool. It's good.
Yeah.
And I think I found a study one time, and I wish I would have saved this study. I believe it was on fibromyalgia, which is one of those disorders that there's a lot of doctors that say it's fake and it's bullshit. But it's basically a neurological thing that people have a lot of pain and stuff. I found a study one time where they did sleep studies on these people with fibromyalgia. And the interesting thing was they had sleep just like mine. And I'm like, so this, to me, this isn't fibromyalgia, isn't the disorder here. Sleep is the disorder. Get them to
Yeah.
sleep, and I'll bet you they feel a whole hell of a lot better.
Yeah.
And I wonder if a lot of mental disorders are not also tracked back to sleep. Like we want to separate all these different mental disorders in our society now, when maybe they're all caused by the same thing. I mean, I was actually diagnosed bipolar, which I don't agree with. Sure, if I'm not sleeping, I have more and more symptoms of bipolar, even to the point where I've been in mania phases. But if you don't sleep for so many days, eventually you kind of get to this point where you're just full of energy for some reason. And your
Yeah.
body's probably dumping so much adrenaline, and you're going to go into adrenal fatigue and everything eventually. And that's the crash. So am I really
Yeah.
bipolar, or is it just that my sleep's messed up?
Or your body's just not regulating because you don't have the process
Yeah.
to, because it's exhausted. But,
Yeah. And it's funny, since I started, when I finally got to the point where I'm like, okay, listen, my health is more important than my training. So like my goal right now, I set different types of goals, but one of my main goals right now is health over strength. How strong can I get and keep my mental health sane? So, if you have a meet or a competition, it's really hard to miss training because you're like, no, I got to train. I got to do this. I got to do that. And right now I'm like, well, who cares? Like, I don't feel good today. My body doesn't feel right. I'm not going to force training heavy today. I'm going to go for
yeah.
walks, or I'm going to ride my BMX bike, or I'm going to do something that's a whole lot easier on my body. So I have not had any of the when they diagnosed me bipolar, I'm not showing any of those symptoms and haven't for a long time. But I'm focusing more on my sleep now. And now that I train people and I online train people, and I kind of set my schedule up to where I give myself windows. So like on Wednesdays is one of my days to try to do podcast and get some of my online client stuff going. So basically, most of those days I can change my schedule.
Yeah.
So if my sleep's really bad that night, I'm like, well, I'll reset my alarm and stay in bed a couple hours, and then I'll just work a little later that night because I really don't care. And that's helping me to kind of start regulating my sleep a little better, and also not watching overtraining closer. So, it's all kind of tied together. And then I see myself, I'm on the extreme end where my sleep is really, really sensitive. But this gives me a perspective of what can actually happen when you sleep and when you don't sleep. So when I'm working with my clients, and just helping people and doing podcasts like this, I can go, listen, yeah, you missing some sleep is not going to have as hard an impact on you as it does me, because I'm basically on the edge of a knife all the time. But every client I've ever had who finally gets like seriously motivated about their stuff, and I go, listen, you need to get 8 hours of sleep. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe how good everything's going. I can't believe how good I feel. I go, yes, your body needs that sleep. Like that is the recovery phase. That is the growth phase. You want to put on a bunch of muscle, get plenty of sleep.
Yeah, no, and you were just talking because you were saying how you gone healthy over strength now, and you're kind of, and I think a lot of stereotypes in the strength world is train no matter what. If you're sick, tired, like, I mean, I know like average bros, like you squat to 1 rep max every fucking day, and conjugate, like same thing Louis would talk about. No, I don't care if you're sick, you get in here, you fucking squat, like things like that. And it's like, if you listen to the body and listen to those things, and I think that's where you, when you said motivation's bullshit, because motivation might get a workout done. It might, but motivation, it's the discipline of I need to go to bed at this time. I need to make sure I'm doing this. Like you're not going to do that with just motivation. Like, oh, I read this quote today. Now I need to stick with my schedule. I need to make sure I'm getting my sleep. I'm slacking now. I need to take a rest day. I need to listen to my body. You're not going to do that with just motivation. And so I think I completely agree with that. Discipline is way better than motivation.
Well, I think too. I think you go back to I've had the fortune of having J.M. Blakely on my podcast a couple times, and he's an unbelievable, legendary bench presser and like this guru of powerlifting. And I like him because he really goes into the mental side of everything. And we were talking about, he brought up the idea that you're going to train better if you're happy, which is interesting to me because, like I said, I used my anger and stuff for a long time. And if you watch videos of me competing, I drill up every hateful, mean thing in my body to get my adrenaline and get everything pumped up. Now I pull back right before I do the lift, but I use that to get things going. And I got to thinking about it, and we were talking about it on the podcast. He's actually right. I mean, think about your life when you first meet some really great chick and you're in love. Think about how everything, man, nothing bothers you. Like everything feels good. You're great. Your training goes through the roof. Well, why not be like that all the time? Why do we want to try to train with hatred and anger? Well, and most of the time we're training with hatred and anger because we're not healed. Like we're overtrained, we're beat up, we're pissed off. Like we have to go to that place to get our training done. And if you have to go to the place to get your training done, you're probably not healthy. Like you would be much better off going, I want to be healthier. I want to feel better, which means I'm going to get my sleep. I'm going to get my nutrition. I'm going to back off of my training a little bit. And then your training is going to be better, which is a question of, do you want to train a lot with shitty quality, or do you want to train less with high quality?
Yeah. Yeah. You talk about how now you do that and you learn to cut back on the training. And then you said that you have your guys on your team that you do that. How are you able to build the trust between each other to be able to have that where you come in and communicate? How are you feeling? And not only can you talk about it, but they listen to you. Like, I feel like that's a really hard thing to do because when I was younger and did things, it's like most of the time I didn't fucking listen. I was a dumb kid and everything like that. But it's like, how were you able to develop that trust with the team?
It's really hard and it takes time. So what you just said about a kid, though, is really interesting because I started going back over some of Arthur Jones and Mike Miller stuff recently, which is HIIT training, like high intensity training. And I had researched all this stuff when I was a kid. And it's interesting. It was interesting to research it now because I thought, wow, I took a completely incorrect perspective of this training when I was a kid. I took away what I wanted to hear and I ignored everything else. So I'm like, HIIT training, I got to go crazy every session, every day, and I got to do it for hours. And I beat the snot out of myself. Luckily, I was a teenager and I was still able to make some gains. And then I read it now and I go, yeah, he's talking about intense training, but for very short intervals with plenty of rest in between. I go, it's interesting that I took what I wanted to in that perspective when I was younger. And I thought about that when I coach people now. When I basically learned conjugate through Dave Tate and Louie and those guys, the West Side. And when I first started, I started on basically their same week long split. And I quickly realized this is not going to work, because every 3 to 4 weeks we all went to shit. And I'm like, you're talking about me who doesn't sleep. You got guys that do sleep. I got a tall, skinny guy. I got a shorter, heavier guy. Like, I got all these different people, and we're all running into the same problem. And that's when I started thinking about it. And I'm like, okay, we need more rest. We need more recovery. And ironically, my friend Mark Bartley was on the other side of the nation running into the same problem. And we both took two different routes to work the problem out. He started deloading his guys every fourth week, no matter what. I don't want to have a deload week. Like, I don't want a whole week of deload. So I started spreading the schedule out. So instead of doing those 4 main sessions in a week, we started doing them in 8 days. And then over my competitive career, we kept spreading it out. And I remember when we went from 12 to 14. And the funny thing is like, when I first started spreading it out, I would think about it for 2 or 3 months. And then I'm like, all right, man, we got to do something. Let's try it. And everybody would get stronger. And then the next time I'm like, man, like, I'm running into the same thing we ran into before. And I'm like, all right, let's spread it out. And again, it would take me a month or 2 to think about it. Again, everybody got stronger, which says 2 things. First of all, what works for you at one point in your life isn't going to work for you later. What got me to a 400-pound bench press did not get me to an 800-pound bench press. Things had to change. As you get stronger, you're going to need more recovery time. So we get to, we're on like basically those 4 main sessions, plus I add in GPP and deload sessions. And instead of doing that in a week, we're doing it in 12 days. I run into the same problem again. And I go, that's it. We're going to 14 days. And my one training partner is like, no, I'll be undertrained. And I go, no, you won't. I can tell you're overtrained right now. This is what's happening. And I go, normally this is kind of a democracy, but it's my team and I'm king. And this is what everyone needs. And this is what we're doing, period. He goes, well, then I'll just have to train on my own. And I go, well, then I'm sorry, dude. You got to go train on your own then, because that's what we're doing. And he did stay. And he was squatting somewhere a little over 9, I believe, at that time. And within, I think it was 3, maybe 4 months, he did his first 1,000-pound squat. And at that time, I've only known a couple of people that did 1,000 pounds drug free. I'm one, and he was 2. And right after he did it, I just started grinning, and he's like, shut the hell up. I don't want to hear it. And I go, worked, didn't it? Thought you were going to be undertrained. Looks like you did a pretty good job to me. So, but it's that mentality.
Yeah.
We're so stuck on that mentality. And I have a guy, I recently did a consultation, because I do consultations for people too. If they can't really pay for like online, we can do consultations and video reviews and stuff. I had a guy call me up, and he was ready to quit powerlifting. And his coach said, would you do a consultation with Chad Aichs before you make this decision? And he did it, and he called me up, and I'm like, listen, he told me his whole story. I asked him all his questions, and I go, here's the deal. First of all, you have a physical job, but I can tell you're kind of a blue collar guy. So you're doing what I did. Well, that's my job. That don't count. It doesn't matter what I do at work. I should still be able to train like everyone else. That's bullshit. You're not the guy who sits in the office. You're not the guy that drives a truck all day. You're actually doing physical work. It's no different than training. You have to take that into account. And I go, second of all, you're training way too much and you're overtrained, and it is affecting your mentality. Like the reason you can't see what I'm going to explain to you is probably because you're overtrained. So I got him. We went over a new training program. I got him to spread it out. He starts texting me. And I remember where the text was like, "What is this voodoo bullshit you got me doing?" He's like, "I'm PRing every session." I go, "Yeah, because you're actually growing stronger. You go to the gym, you stimulate growth, and you give your body time to recover and time to grow. Then you go back and you're stronger." And so he does a meet. He hits some PRs, but he kind of had a few mistakes going into it. Then his next meet, I call him, I text him, and I'm like, "How's it going?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm pretty beat up and this and this. And the meet didn't go like he wanted." And come to find out, he went back to his old schedule. And I asked him, I'm like, "Why did you go back to your old schedule?" And he goes, "Well, I wasn't training as much. And if I had a bad session, like I didn't get to train as much. So I thought I should train more." And I go, "And how'd that go for you?" And he's like, "Well, not good at all."
Not well.
So now we're waiting. He's coming into his next meet. I think he's got 6 weeks. He texted me the other day. He's putting up numbers better than he's ever put. He's like, "This is the best I have ever felt coming into a meet." And he goes, "It's crazy." And even then he goes, "It's the best I ever felt." He goes, "I'm a little beat up and a little sore." And I go, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa. Wait a minute. Why are you a little beat up and a little sore?" And so he wanted to keep training. And I go, "Listen, do me a favor. Just take the next week and deload." I go, "You still got 7 weeks to the meet. If you do more, you're not going to perform." I mean, I would rather see him come in a little undertrained than overtrained.
Yeah.
And so he did. And I talked to him like the other day, and he's like, "Yeah, I feel better, man. I went in and benched and I got a PR on my bench." And I'm like, "Good. That's it. This sport, not even this sport. I mean, bodybuilding, lifting for sports. Lifting in general is so interesting to me because we have such misconceptions of ideas. And I scroll through Instagram and I'm just shaking my head like, and then you find the people that don't know what they're doing have tons of followers. And the people that actually know what they're doing, nobody's following.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where did we go so wrong? And it's like people, even when I was coming up in powerlifting and I'm starting to beat all these guys, and they're like, they find out how much I train, and they're like, "That's bullshit. Chad hardly trains, and he's stronger than me." And I talk to him, and I go, "Well, listen, let me help you with your program." "No, I can't do less."
No.
And I'm like, "Well, have you ever tried doing less?" So like, "No, I haven't. It won't work." I'm like, "So you've never tried doing less, but you're convinced it won't work." I go, what happens every time you do more?" "Oh, I just get beat up and get hurt and get injured." I go, "But you want to keep trying doing more and you don't want to try doing less." They're like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Do you understand how illogical that is?"
Yeah. And if you look at some of the way that some powerlifters and some people like that, if you look at the way they age, like when they're
Mm-hmm.
hitting your age, they look like you look great for a 50-year-old. But some of the guys that are 50, with the way they've overtrained and the way they beat their body up, they just look miserable. And it's like because they didn't think that through. They didn't look. I think they have to be open to different opinions and look
Mm-hmm.
at it and be able to analyze that stuff and realize maybe they're onto something and be able to trust that process of maybe I need to try that. It's like if you're stuck in your ways, because that's one of the things that I know I did is eventually because I always program myself and that was one of my huge problems. And I actually went to Matt Wenning's programming and hired one of his coaches. And then I didn't listen. He was giving me like four. I was like, this is not enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I did get a little bit stronger, but if I would have actually followed his program without, I'm like, yeah, it's not going to hurt to throw the extra here. It's not going to hurt to do this. And the guy I worked with didn't check in on me and be like, are you following this? And like that. It's like, I was like, I just didn't get there because I didn't listen. I thought I knew best. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
same kind of thing as you was I started working out when I was 11 years old. I'm like, it's worked for me this far. Like, but a lot of people just like aren't open to it. And like Lane, what's his name? Lane Norton, or
Mm-hmm.
Bio Lane, or he posted the other day about if you're not open to changing your mind every couple years, then you need to work on something because you need to see things and look at these different perspectives and figure out what's going to work best for you and
Yeah.
change your ideas if they're wrong.
I just did a great podcast with Matt. We've been friends for a long time. He's like one of those top guys that I recommend to pretty much anybody. Like Chris Duffin, Matt Wenning, Dave Tate, like those are the guys that I go, dude, I don't care what they say, like listen to them.
Yeah.
And but
No, I listened
even
to
me
that
and Matt were
podcast.
talking, and one of the things he said is he goes, I want to look at the guy that's been competing for a long time and is now 50 or 60 and doesn't have any issues.
Yeah.
Like that's the guy I want to follow. I don't want to follow the guy that's 50 or 60 and is beat to crap. And that's why I tell people now, and like I post stuff on my Instagram, like I'm out riding BMX bikes. Like I'm running hill sprints. I don't have shoulder problems. I don't have knee problems. I don't have hip problems. I had one back issue because I had a granite company and I tweaked my back, but even that's getting fixed now. So like, I mean, I got through all this lifting some of the biggest numbers in the world. I don't have joint replacements. I don't have any problems with any of this stuff. But I always gave my body, and this is the same thing with recovery. People think, so when we get bigger, like when we get bigger and we get stronger, we put on more muscle. Do your organs get bigger? Do they get stronger? No, they're the same as they were before. Is your
Yeah.
pituitary getting bigger? Can it now produce more growth hormone than it used to? No, it's the same. It's the same it always was. So you're asking your body to recover, but the part of your body that does the recovery, it doesn't get bigger like your muscles and everything else does. And then that recovery isn't only about the muscle, it's about the tendons. It's about the articular cartilage in your elbow. It's about the meniscus. It's about all these other factors that need to recover as well. You know, even they talk about even if you're not doing steroids, if you're getting bigger and you're doing lots of supplements and you're creating soreness every day, your kidneys have to process, your kidneys and your liver have to process all that stuff. Well, if you're overtraining your body, you're overtraining all of your body. You're overtraining the whole system. That's when things starts happening. That's when things start having people start having problems with their organs and stuff. Like it's a unit, but only certain parts of the union are going to get bigger. You know, like my liver's not going to get bigger like my muscles. And if it does, that's not a good thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's a system. We need to look at the system. And especially when I go to, I find it really interesting with my life and being on the edge that I'm at. I can literally tell when my sleep's a little worse, my mentality.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of mornings where I get up and I go, Chad, all right, man. I know you didn't sleep good. I can feel the negativity. I can feel the frustration, you know, and that's when I'll do a morning walk and try to like get past the problems that I'm having because I didn't sleep. And I'm getting pretty good at that. But it would be easier just to get good sleep every night.
Yeah.
And then your mentality's better. Then you're more positive. Then I mean, if you're having problems and you eat a lot of junk food and you're having problems not eating junk food, one of my first thoughts is, how well do you sleep? Because if you're sleeping like shit and you're not getting enough rest, you're going to crave crap food. If you get good sleep, you're going to be in a much better mindset. It's going to be easier for you to stick to your diet plan because you're going to be thinking better. You're going to be feeling better. Your attitude's going to be better.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of people don't look at the longevity. They want it now. You know, like I want to
Mm-hmm.
bench 500 pounds right now. I want a six pack tomorrow. They don't think about these things take time and you need to do them the right way so that you can recover correctly and do all these things so that if you get to that point, you can sustain it and have the health afterwards, you know?
Well, that's definitely true too. I did a post not too long ago where I posted like some footage from my first meet where I totaled 1,700, and that was in like 2000. And then in 2007, I put up my highest total, which was 2733. So it was basically 7 years to get that strong. Like a lot of people, they get on Instagram or they look up somebody and it's like they have this thought in their head that it just happened overnight. And it didn't. It took years. And like some of the people that have six packs, if I mean, really, that's why I tell people go back and look at their story. And then even when I had Matt on, Matt talked about being stuck at 500 for like 4 years. Like you don't keep making gains all the time. There's times where you need to have that just stick to it and work through it. And now the same thing goes with nutrition, fat loss, putting on muscle, and our mentalities. Like change takes a long time. If you're going, hey, wait a minute, I'm overweight. Okay, let's go to the root of, let's figure out the root of the problem of why am I overweight, first of all. And you realize that, hey, I'm not dealing with stress well. I'm eating, I'm stress eating. I'm in a bad mood, so I crave junk and I'm eating a lot of junk. Well, like, okay, let's start working on your nutrition. But if we don't fix the root problem, which is your mentality, it's probably not going to stick. So let's look into your mentality, and maybe you're one of those people that lets yourself get stressed really easy. Maybe you're one of those people that lets your emotions go crazy. Like if some guy cuts you off, you just completely flip out into road rage. Well, that just screwed your whole day out. I mean, that just messed up your whole system. And we have the power to control those things. But even that's not going to happen overnight. Like it's going to take a long time of you going, son of a god. Okay, wait a minute. Do I want to be pissed off right now? Okay, no, I don't. All right, I'm going to calm down. You know, it's going to take months and months and months before you're the kind of guy where somebody cuts you off and you're like, what an asshole. Oh, well.
Anyway,
Yeah, anyway, I don't feel like being pissed off, so I'm not going to let it get to me. Like it takes a while to master that kind of stuff. But
that's
those are
taken me
the
20
changes
years.
that actually change your life.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and with that too, that you're saying, because like I think a lot of people see it like guys like you and everything like that, that they think it happened overnight. They think you're just naturally gifted, like you're a freaking nature. Like when you talk about, well, I struggled with sports at a young age, like they didn't realize that took 30 years. And a lot of people used to do some things like that with me. They're like, oh, you just have good genetics. I'm like, no, like I started working out when I was 10, but not only that, my dad and uncles were all blue collar too. So I was doing sheetrock. I was putting in fences. I was hauling things and carrying things. I'm 80 pounds carrying an 80-pound thing of cement. Like I did this over that long. And that's why I was able to get some size and leanness, because it wasn't just the gym. And I also knew how to work like that. I knew how to do that. People are like, you're just genetically gifted. I'm like, okay, then why doesn't the rest of my family look like that?
Yeah.
It's kind of probably the same thing with you. You're probably like, okay, well, there are other people that might have had my, it wasn't a gift. It had to be earned. And there are certain people that are, genetics will play certain parts in certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are people who are just big, fast, strong for no reason. They don't ever go to the gym, but like not everybody's like that. Like some of us have to work, and you need to learn how to do that and do it in a healthy way and work on it with your physical and your mental to be able to stay there and sustain all that.
And I think that goes back to the mentality of success and changing your mentality. If you are the kind of person that looks at everybody that has something that you want and you make an excuse for them having it, you need to change the way you think. Like you need to become the kind of person, and this is, I look back at I try to look, because I want to help people. I look back at my career and I look back at my life, and I'm always analyzing what I did. Not because I miss it or anything like that. I mean, I'm not trying to relive my glory going back over thinking about my training. I'm trying to go, what could I have done better and how can I be a better coach? But I do that with my life too. And I look back at powerlifting and go, what were the things that were good for me? And when we talk about genetics, maybe genetics isn't necessarily what we think it is. Like I think in terms of genetics with athletes, maybe the genetics is just that at a young age, they knew how to throw a ball. They knew how to throw a ball. They knew how to throw a ball.
Yeah.
We're like, you see kids where just pick up a baseball and they can just wing it. And like, that wasn't
Yeah.
me. Like I picked it
Yeah.
up and threw it and it was okay. I mean, I wasn't like a nerd, I didn't throw like a girl, but maybe the genetic advantage isn't that they're stronger or that they're in better shape, but it's just that they knew how to move their body. So
Yeah.
then from right off the bat, they learned correctly. And then once you learn correctly, it's easier to get stronger. The same thing, if you want your best bench press to get stronger faster, learn proper technique right away. Understand the muscles that are actually doing the movement so you can figure out your weak links, and you're going to make way more progress than the guy who just gets under the bar and goes for it.
Yeah.
And I know this because coming up in powerlifting, I beat a lot of guys that a lot of people would go, that dude's a genetic freak. And I end up beating him because I had better technique, because I
Yeah.
trained smarter, not harder. But I look back and I think a lot of it, when I first got into powerlifting, I was totally against steroids. I didn't have a problem if somebody used them. It just wasn't right for me at that time. So I wasn't going to do it. Later on, we found out I had low tests. I went on HRT. Then I started playing around with it a little bit. This is after I already put up huge numbers, though. So when I first started, I wasn't going, oh, that guy's genetic, whatever. I went, dude, that dude's awesome. Whether it's genetics or not, I want to find out how he got there.
Yeah.
Because even if it is great genetics, he still apparently knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And I want to learn from him. So I never had that trying to break other people down. I looked at him and went, dude, they're doing something right.
Yeah.
Like, what can I learn from them? Like, it's awesome that they're great. Can I benefit from that?
Yeah.
And I go, listen, I think anybody with mediocre genetics can actually be very successful in a sport like powerlifting. And then you have the guys that have great genetics that don't really want to learn or put anything into it, but will rely on their genetics. They're going to be mediocre.
Yeah.
So you can actually be better than them. And then if you take a guy who has good genetics, but is willing to do the work and willing to put the time in, well, that guy's going to be a legend.
Yeah.
But still, the regular guy can outdo people with genetics. If you want to go in there and go, listen, and even at that, I can even change that. Like if people talk about me being genetic and I go, you know what my genetic talent is? I'm hard-headed as hell. That's my genetic talent. My genetic talent was, I think I just told this story. The first time I squatted 700 pounds, I went, I'm going to do 1,000 pounds. I can do 1,000 pounds drug-free. And at the time, people are like, you can't do 1,000 pounds drug-free. Only a couple people have done 1,000. Like, you can't do that. And I go, yeah, I can.
Yeah, I can. Watch it.
And they're like, how? I go, I don't know yet. Well, how long is it going to take you? I go, I don't know, but I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Like, that was my genetic talent. The fact that I believed in myself and went, yeah, I'm going to do it. Like, I don't care. I'll figure it out. It's going to happen. Like, I'm not going to quit till it happens.
Yeah, I think having the hard headedness, but then also the willing to learn. Be like,
Yeah.
I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to figure it out. And so you're like, I'm hard headed enough that I'm going to learn how that's possible.
And that could have been a genetic talent too. The willingness to actually learn.
Yeah.
So like, what is genetics? And then, I come to this point in our little conversation about genetics and I go, you know what? Who gives a shit? The person is pretty amazing. Somehow they got there. Like, I don't know anybody that sat on the couch and is a professional athlete.
Yeah.
They all did some work at some point. So why can't I learn from them?
And I think that's why I got into powerlifting, because before I got into powerlifting, I was doing CrossFit. And then I did some Olympic lifting, but then I went to a powerlifting meet. And I was like, this environment at the time, this was, I don't know, 8 years ago or something like that. I liked the environment more, because when you go to a CrossFit competition, those guys, they're kind of standoffish and they're not being supportive of each other. It's like, you're my competitor, fuck you. And when you go into a power lift meet, it's like everybody just wants to see you throw up big fucking numbers and they want to
Mm-hmm.
talk to you about it. And it was just, it seemed way more supportive and it was more fun to me. I'm like, I loved the concept of CrossFit and I loved pushing myself to that exhaustion and doing that. But competing in the powerlifting with those people, I liked a lot more. And so then I went into powerlifting because I'm like, this is more fun at the meet
Mm-hmm.
itself. Like I liked the training at CrossFit, but I was like, I think the powerlifting, and I don't do meets anymore, but like, I don't know if it's changed. I know some people complain about the way powerlifting's gone, but back then I was like, this is a fucking fun place to go because people want to hear what you're doing. They want to ask and they want to support you. They just want to see people break some records and throw some
Yeah.
serious fucking weight. But is that something you felt like too when you got into powerlifting, or was that?
Yeah, I'm thinking about it from because my antisocial. I'm thinking about it from an antisocial perspective.
Yeah.
I do. When I first got into it, it was fun because even when I did my first meet, people are like, "Oh, dude, this is your first meet? Awesome!" Like, dude, I hope you do good. And then I would go to some of those meets. I mean, I go to a meet by myself, and I'm like, was I supposed to bring someone to hand off my bench, or do you guys help me? Or and then they're like, "Oh yeah, dude, we'll totally help you." And like guys would be there helping their buddies, and they're like, "Oh, Chad needs help too. Let's go help Chad." And like it was really friendly. And even I think even when I was at the very top, I always felt like, you're in a room with 20 of the strongest people walking the planet. And we all wanted to beat each other, but it was weird because we kind of wanted to beat each other at our best. It was
Yeah.
like if somebody got hurt, you're like, crap, that sucks. Like, because I wanted to beat them.
I wanted to top him when he was
So it's
at the
like
peak.
you're still cheering for everybody. And like my whole career, I would help anybody that needed help. If somebody said, Chad, dude, you're killing the bench. What are you doing? And I remember going to competitions and we would sit in the lobby and like we're all talking to each other. We're all telling each other what we're doing. And it wasn't like this big secret. And you're like, I can't have anyone know what I do because I got to hide my knowledge. Yeah, it was literally like everybody just wants to see everybody lift crazy, huge ass numbers. And I think to that extent, I think in powerlifting, I think it's changed a little bit in the male aspect of it. I think the female aspect of it is killing it. I went to the women's pro-am last year and like the camaraderie between women is awesome.
Yeah.
Like it's women are putting up crazy numbers right now in powerlifting. But they're having more fun than the guys from what I can tell. They cheer each other on way more. And it's a really different dynamic that's more like what powerlifting was when I started.
Yeah. Yeah. I was kind of wondering if that's why you stuck with it because I listened to a few of your podcasts on the one you were talking about when you played football, how you kind of got frustrated because it's like you liked it, but you could play your best game and still lose the game. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, maybe is it the fact that in powerlifting you have that support and kind of camaraderie around you, but your outcome is all based on you. Is that kind of why you were like stuck with that? You're like, this is fun because it's all on me and it's how I beat myself. Like I have to do this, but I do have support around me. I didn't know if there was
Yeah, it was a
something
little
like
bit like on my high school track team, I was always a captain and I led all the stretches and I led all the warm ups. And so, like, it was a team and I want the team to do well. But at the end of the day, did I win the shot put? Did I win the discus?
yeah,
And I liked that. I did much better with that. And then coming into powerlifting, I think I loved powerlifting just because I love lifting. And then it was like I had like a probably, man, maybe 5 to 7 years of no competing. And so I was dying to compete again. And it was cool. It was cool that there was that camaraderie there, that everybody's aggressive and wants to win, and we all train our asses off, but we're actually supportive of each other too, which was really cool. And then when I decided I needed a team or wanted a team to train with, and I built my team, that reinvigorated me with the team concept, I think. Because I had guys that even though we don't all live together now, they're still family. Their kids are all like nieces and nephews to me. who they're all grown up now because I'm old, but I still talk to all of them. We still see each other. I mean, everybody has lives and it might not be as often as would be cool, but we still all see each other. And so that reinvigorated me on the team concept. And where it's like, if somebody planned to meet, one person would be like, okay, I'm going to go to help you at that meet. And then I'll do this meet and you can come help me at that meet. And so you really had, and my team was probably different than other teams because we didn't do a lot of rah-rah stuff. We were harsh on each other, but we were harsh on each other because we expected the best. Like you go to a lot of gyms and people are like, yeah, you got it. You got it. It's all you. And on my team, they're like, yeah, you got it, dude, but you let your elbows flare. You didn't get your scaps together. Like you need to pull your shit together, man. You made it harder than it should have been. But we all knew that that's what we needed to hear because we all wanted to be our best. And so I don't know if it's because I put the team together and I kind of like, tried to make it that way. But for me, that was awesome to have people that actually gave a shit. And not just, I don't want like just positive support. I need to hear the stuff I need to hear.
I think that having those people that will be honest with you, it's better than somebody just going, "You're doing fucking great." Like,
Mm-hmm.
because that could be with any aspect of if you're doing something slightly wrong, it's like if somebody doesn't care about you and know that you're going to take it the right way, they're just going to tell you it's great. They're going to tell you
Yeah.
it's awesome that you're doing great. But the people who do care about you and you do have that bond with, they're not going to bullshit you. They're going to be like, "Hey, yeah, that was a solid lift, but your knees came in, work on your hamstring," like those
Mm-hmm.
pointers. And I think having that in life too is something that people need to work on, is
And even
developing
the same
strong
thing,
relationships.
even the same thing with the overtraining.
Yeah.
Like you could come in feeling like shit, and a lot of other people would be like, "Yeah, I'm going to get him pumped up and get him going." Where on my team, they go, "Okay, well, why aren't you feeling good?" And we start asking questions, and we're like, "No, you're obviously overtrained, dude. You're not lifting today." Because that's what
Yeah.
they need to hear. They need to not train. And like that was hard for me, like especially when I first kind of got guys on my team that I felt knew what they were talking about. I still resisted it. There's times where I would come in and they're like, "Chad, you shouldn't lift today." And I'm like, "Oh, bullshit. I can lift today. Dude, you watch. I'll get a good session in." It usually sucked. And it took me a little while to get to where I would walk in and like my partner Ethan to be like, "Yeah, you're not training today." And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "Dude, go look in the mirror." He goes, "You're not training today." And I'd be like, "All right, cool, whatever." I hated it, but I had learned that these guys are right, man. They're going to tell me what I need to hear, not what I want to hear.
Yeah. And you have to be able to accept that communication and be able to give it back as
Yeah.
well, you know.
And I think
So
I
that's a
think
whole
that I
team.
think that when we're talking about like going back into the mental disorders, I think that's the same thing. We need people around us that don't feed into the bullshit, but actually tell us the truth. Even if it's to the point of like you go to work and your boss says something and you flip out and get completely pissed off. I don't need the person around me that goes, "Yeah, hey, screw him. He's full of shit." I need the person around me that goes, "Chad, this is a point where you have a choice. Do you want to be pissed off? Whether what he said was right or wrong, there's a way for you to stay calm and deal with this, or there's a way for you to get all pissed off and screw your whole system up."
Yeah,
And
there's
if
a
you're
healthy
if
way
you
to have
are
that.
into training and you want to lose weight or you want to gain weight or you want to get stronger, every time you let yourself get stressed out for something that isn't worth it, you're wasting energy. You're slowing down your gains.
Yeah. It's called stress for a reason. It doesn't just stress you mentally, it stresses your body out too.
Yeah.
So
And our body does not know the difference between physical and mental stress.
yeah. Yeah. And if you keep letting that build, it's just either way, that stress is going to catch up to you
Mm-hmm.
somewhere and somehow. And when you talk about like having that reaction with a boss or something like that, it's like if you continually get yourself in those situations where you're losing your temper or you're blowing up, you're just building that stress and you're making your body feel like that's how it needs to react
Mm-hmm.
to everything. And you just keep spiraling down. Like I did it for years and years where I was always on, I was flip the hat and I'd lose my shit because I did
Hmm.
not have my shit squared away. And I had not learned the ways to cope and develop myself mentally to where all I did was work, beat the shit out of myself at the gym, and then drink till
Hmm.
2 in the morning. Then I'd sleep like shit. And I always wondered why I felt like shit. It's like, well, you drank till 2 in the morning, woke up at 6:30, went and worked 10 hours of hard labor, did 2 hours in the gym, and you're blowing up on people all the time. Like
Yep.
you don't see some key factors here that are fucking you up. Like, and I didn't have anybody go, what the fuck are you doing? Because everybody thought I was just gonna blow up at them because that's what I
Hmm.
did. So I didn't have that relationship with people because they were nervous. They're like, he's not gonna listen anyway. And now I'm at a point where people I've developed these relationships more and I'm mentally where I don't lose my shit. Rarely ever. If I do, I catch myself, but I'm like, all right, what's going on? Why are you doing this? Like before I blow up at them, am I blowing up at them or am I blowing up about the other shit going on right now?
Right.
And so
And how long did that take?
that's taken me years. Like I've just barely gotten to this point for the past 3 years.
Yeah.
I've been able to do this, but I did that for 20 years. Like it took
And
a
it's
long
and it
time to
sounds like
get
you're
there.
still working on it too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that's like tell people I'm like it's never gonna be gone. Kind of like my depression's never gonna be gone.
Hmm.
But I'm learning and I'm trying these different things and I'm trying to develop to where I know it's never going to be gone, but I have a handle on it and I know when it's going bad, what I need to do. Kind of like you're talking about with your training and with your sleep, like you've learned these things and it's been a fucking process, right?
Hmm.
You're like, it's, and people need to learn. It's not going to happen overnight. It doesn't. And I think that a lot of people are looking for that quick fix. Like we were talking about the bench and everything like that going up. It's like,
Yeah.
they want a quick fix of if I go to the doctor, what are you going to put me on that's going to fix this?
Yeah.
They don't want to sit down and have these hard conversations or look at everything and have that discipline to fix things the right way so they can long term be healthy with it all.
And I think that's one of the biggest things is thinking long term, thinking, and it was the same thing with strength. Like it was a step by step, little bit at a time. My main focus was always on just getting better. If I keep getting better and keep improving, I'll end up where I want to be. And so it's the same thing with mentality, with who you are as a person, with dealing with mental issues. You just got to keep taking them steps and you just got to keep working on it. And I think part of that is being able to forgive yourself when you do mess up and kind of going, hey, I mess up. I'm human. It's going to happen. I forgive myself, but part of forgiving myself is making sure that I move forward and keep getting better at it and just keep going and keep learning. And I mean, if there's a point to life for me, it's to just keep getting better. And the better I get, the more I can help other people.
Yeah. Being able to pass that on. It's like if it's taking me this long to learn it and I can pass it to somebody else younger, help them figure that out earlier or at least explore that earlier. It's like I feel like especially it's like I have all this knowledge, why not use it to help somebody? Like now you're
Yeah.
using it with coaching, you're using it with the podcast. It's like, well, what else do I if I just learn it and keep it, sure, it makes me but I might as well fucking use it to help other people. Like
Yeah.
it's gonna help them, it's gonna make and it helps me feel better by knowing that I helped somebody with that.
Yeah.
Um
I have a group I do in the afternoons, which is one of the guys is IFL football player. The other one's a master's power lifter. And I have them train with this 15-year-old kid I have. And I actually did that on purpose. I put those three together on purpose. And it's funny because me and Paul, who's the older one, we talk about, God, dude, if I would have been able to at 15, if I could have had a coach like this and been around these people, holy, how much faster could I have got stronger? And even in Hunter's, he's the football player, so he's only 22, I think. And even he's going, man, dude, he's so lucky to be able to train with you guys. And I go with you too. and just like how much, like, it kind of, everything that you've been through, it kind of makes it worthwhile a little bit, I guess. The
Yeah.
same thing with my sleep and stuff. I could be one of those people that bitches about, having narcolepsy and depression, or I could go, okay, this is what I have. Like, what's the best I can do with it? And can I actually use that to help other people?
Yeah. It's
Like,
like, why
if
not
you
take
look at
that?
it in the right way, it's a gift. It's all about perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. Where it's like, it was a negative thing for me, but I can turn it into a positive in
Mm-hmm.
the long run by being able to learn from it and share that.
Yeah,
So,
and help
yeah.
people avoid the shit that we've been through.
Because that's the other thing I try to tell people is like, everybody's been through some shit or is going through some shit. Like, if
Mm-hmm.
you can understand that and be more empathetic to people and not let it affect you as much or be able to help in a little way, then that's a great thing. Like, we can learn that and see that by, I'm talking to all these different guests from different backgrounds and different places that have all been different. And we've all been through something and we've all learned. And if we could start sharing what we've learned and support each other in these ways, it's going to help a lot. Because I feel like we don't support each other in those kind of ways now, especially as men. We don't talk about
Yeah,
certain
we
things
definitely do not. Yeah.
like emotions. Like, you don't tell somebody, man, I'm fucking depressed. Like, usually you're like, you feel like I'm being a pussy if I tell them this. Like, I'm not going to admit that. I'm not going to admit that I tried to commit suicide last night. Like, and that I don't
Mm-hmm.
know what to do and I'm lost right now. Like, how are they going to look at me? We need to break that stereotype of most people. They should look at you as shit. What do you need? Not you are being a bitch. Like, get over yourself. But
Yeah, and I mean, and I think there's a time too for the, hey, dude, you're being a bitch, get over it. Uh,
yeah,
but even at that, well, so what? Like, we all have times. I mean, we're all frustration. We all have different levels. We all have how far we've been pushed. We've all been through different shit. And I totally agree with you about opening up and helping it. And the other thing is too, when we're talking to other people, like me and you, we're not done. We're going to have more shit. There's going to be more times. There's going to be different problems we've never came up upon. But the more open people are, the more we can educate ourselves, the more we can learn, the better we can deal with all the other problems and all the other shit that comes up. So I think it's like I have one of my clients, they're in their 75. And I enjoy talking to them too, because I'm like, okay, I'm old, but they're older. So they
yeah,
still had more experience than I've had. And the stuff that they're dealing with now, I'm going to have to deal with it sometime too. So I can still learn from them.
yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people, especially in strength, because I wonder about this too. I don't know if you know AJ Roberts.
Of him. Yeah.
He did a post the other day, we messaged back and forth about it. He was talking about imposter syndrome. And I totally feel there's lots of times where I feel like I have imposter syndrome, especially when my sleep's bad and my depression comes up. You know how if you ever had that where I don't know shit, dude, everything I know is wrong. I suck. Like, these feelings they're feelings that there's no logic to them. They don't come from anywhere. They're just there. And even though I know that they're just there and they don't mean anything, there's times where it's hard not to pay attention to them.
Yeah.
And you kind of get this imposter syndrome, like you don't know nothing. And AJ did a thing where he's like, I would rather have a coach that has a little bit of imposter syndrome than a coach who thinks he knows everything when he doesn't. Because we can't know everything. Because every time you get stronger, things change. Every day you age, things change. Everybody is different. I would rather have a coach that goes, you know what? I got a ton of knowledge. I've dealt with a ton of shit. And so I can make you stronger. Even if sometimes stuff comes up that we don't know, together, me and you, we're going to work through it and figure it out.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's
And
the
I
kind
think
of coach I would rather have. And a coach that goes, you know what? I don't know everything. So I'm still going to seminars. I'm still talking to my buddies. I'm still I did a podcast with Nate Harvey the other day, and he like sparked some other thoughts in my head. And I'm like, ooh, I never thought of that. I need to think about that. I need to try
yeah.
that. So I'm still learning. I could get up here and go, listen, I got 40 years under the bar. I was one of the best in the world. I've broken world records. Screw all you guys. I know what I'm talking about. But it's not true. I still have more to learn. There's still new concepts coming up. There's so many complexities to strength training, and you can't know it all. The thing is to gather as much knowledge as you can, get the intelligence to be able to utilize that knowledge, and then be open for all the new things that are going to come. And I like to talk about the placebo effect, which I think is totally true. And that even goes to training. If I have an athlete who comes to me and goes, yeah, I'm going to pay you. Somebody told me you know what you're talking about. I don't really know if you do or not, but I'm going to pay you and let's see what happens. I'm going to go, you should probably go find someone else. Because I could train you and be the best coach in the world. But if you don't believe in me, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And I've seen coaches that are horrible, but they're really good at getting people to buy in. The people usually do pretty good. So like, no matter what, you're still going down to the mentality of people, and everyone is different. And as a coach, you've got to learn how to reach those people. Like everyone that I train a little bit different because they're different people. Like I know the people I can be harsh with. I know the people I need to push. I know the people I need to be a little more sensitive with. I know the people that I need to push. I know the people that are going to push themselves, and I'm basically there to pull them back. Because like we said, there's a lot of people that will do way too much. And so like you're always going to be learning that, and it's always going to take a little while to work with somebody and figure out exactly who they are and what they need. And that may change at some point too, because people change. So like there's all these different dynamics that go into everything I'm always amazed how people can be so sure of what they're doing.
Yeah. It's an ignorance of that they're so sure. And I think when you were saying that placebo effect, where you've seen people get results from shitty coaches, but then on the other hand, you can see people not get results from good coaches because they don't listen. So the difference is the person who's getting results from that shitty coach believes they're going to get the results.
Yes.
The guy who's not getting results from a really good coach doesn't believe it's going to go anywhere. And he's ignorant to the fact that they know more than he does. And I think that some of the people you talk about, you say there's these people who have 200,000 followers on Instagram. They have an arrogance to them that they carry themselves and something's worked for them. But then they have that ignorance of this is the only way, even though they're wrong. But people buy into it because they're so confident about it. And people are like, this guy knows what the fuck he's talking about. I'm going to follow him and listen to him, even though he probably doesn't even do that shit. But
that's a whole nother subject. I've written for a couple of big magazines, and I ended up stop writing for them because they wanted to change some of my stuff because it wasn't what they had usually written in the past. Like there's a lot of stuff, even the big magazines and stuff, they're putting out training and this and that, and the people aren't doing it. It's not how that person got that big. He's getting paid to put that in that magazine. And whether they're not, it may not even be what he wrote with what they put in the magazine. Like they're literally there to sell magazines. So they're going to tell you they're actually just like the internet. The internet's going to feed you what you want to know because they want to keep you on longer so they can sell you more shit. And the magazines are like, we don't care if it works or not. We want you to buy magazines. And we know that most people are only going to stick with it 3 to 5 years. And then we're going to get a whole new group in here anyway. So like, instead of telling people what they need to hear, we're going to pump what they want to hear so they keep buying magazines. And that's really the same thing I think with the internet is people, they're looking for, it's similar to, and this is similar to when I first started looking up HIIT training. I'm like, ooh, high intensity. I like that. And I took what I wanted and I wasn't doing HIIT training. I said I was doing HIIT training, but I wasn't doing HIIT training. I was doing like HIIT training plus a whole shit ton more than I should have been doing. So therefore I wasn't really doing, and I would have been like, oh, HIIT training doesn't work. Well, I wasn't really doing hit training. You know, and I see
Yeah.
the same thing. A lot of people like, I do conjugate and it didn't work. I'm like, well, did you really do conjugate though?
Yeah.
Like, because conjugate really is more or less an outline that you need to bend towards yourself.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. I,
really interesting looking at and I think that the more I'm into, like I've always coached people, like I coached on my team and stuff, but I didn't really start coaching for a living until, I don't know, maybe 7 years ago or something like that. So I always did seminars. I always made money coaching, but it wasn't like my full-time thing till recently. And the more I get into it, the more I think what we talk about isn't the most important thing. Like everybody wants to talk about the programs, the reps, the sets, RPE, reps in reserve, all this different stuff. And I'm like, we put a lot of time talking about training, but I've been one of the best in the world. I've known tons of the best in the world. And you know what? We all train different. So how could you possibly convince me that there's one perfect way of training? It seems to me we should be talking more about mentality, about belief in yourself, about what happens outside the gym, about your nutrition, about your sleep. It seems like the training and pushing your body is the easiest part.
yeah.
And even like, because I like to experiment with myself. When I was competing, we were always experimenting, and my team, like I got to give a ton of credit to my team. Without my team, I probably would not have been anywhere near as successful as I was, because they supported me, they traveled with me, I traveled with them. But I created a team where I'm like, I want you guys thinking, I want your say. Like we would do a session on the weekend and then we'd sit around for 2 hours and talk about training. And we would pick a person and like, what do you think that person could be better at? What do we need to do to get that person's bench up? Hey, you guys got any new ideas on what we can train and what we can try? And yeah, most of the stuff we tried got tossed to the side, but we came up with a lot of good stuff too. And I lost my train of thought. Where was I going with this? I think I was going with like it's not the training itself. It's so different, and there's so many different ways to train. And like right now, I know where I was going with it. I'm back on track now. What I'm doing now, when we had competitions coming up, we were still trying things and learning things. But when you got a meet coming up, you don't want to veer too far off what you know is working. So I
Yeah.
didn't get to try as much stuff as I wanted to. And now that I know, like, I'm not going to compete, I might compete again, but if I do, it'll be like as a guest, because I don't really want to compete in masters stuff. Because for me, I was a pro level lifter. To me,
Yeah.
masters are for guys that weren't pros or guys that picked it up later. And I don't want to come in there and like, this is their thing. I don't want to interrupt that. So I might still compete, but it'll only be as guest, or I'll just compete as open or something. I don't care. But right now with my training, because it's more about my health, I can try whatever the hell I want.
Yeah.
And I've tried tons of different things since then, and I can still get strong. And even
Yeah.
right now, one of my goals is to hit 315 for 20 reps at 52. So currently at the moment, I don't have a program. I basically train when I feel like training, and I'll be like, all right, let's push the reps. So let's do this weight, see how many reps we can get. Next week, we'll do a little heavier weight, see how many reps we can get. And then that'll I'll have a session or two that I don't do better at. And I'm like, all right, let's switch it up. Let's go back to 3 sets of 10 for a while. Like I'm literally just going by what I think
Yeah.
to see if I can get to 315 for 20 by doing that.
Yeah.
And over the past, man, maybe time goes by quicker the older you get, maybe 5 or 7 years, in dealing with my health, there's been a couple of times, at least three, probably like four, where I went, that's it, Chad. You really got to back off of your training. You got to get your body healthier, because I'm really trying to get my sleep and my depression back to where it was when I was like in my 20s. So I take these times where I always lift, but I'll lift really light, nothing heavy, and my strength will drop way down. Like I've been since stopping competing, there's been multiple times where I couldn't bench 315. And for me, that's like bottom of the barrel, like kind of depressing. Like I can't even bench 315. Are you shitting me? And I've always built it back up like
Yep.
multiple times, which to me is kind of a sense of pride too. Like, dude, I know what I'm talking about. Like I can let my strength go and gain it back and let it go and gain it back and let it go. And every time I gain it back, I do something different. So
Yeah.
like I keep trying all these different things. And I'm like, listen, there's multiple training programs that work out there.
Yeah.
But I can guarantee if you're not getting your recovery, you're not going to get as strong as you're capable of.
Yeah.
I can guarantee if you're letting your mental health, and even I'm talking about a regular person that doesn't deal with like clinical depression and stuff. If you let your mental health suffer, your training's going to suffer. Your
Yeah.
life's going to suffer. So it seems to me there's a lot of things outside of actual training that matter, but tons of people want to talk about training. Like that's the main, people ask me more about programming than anything else. And I'm
Yeah.
like, why don't you ask me about nutrition? Why don't you ask me about sleep? Why don't you ask me about recovery?
And why don't you track those things? They probably don't even think that probably doesn't even register to them. They think as long as I'm on that program, I'm gonna be a badass and I'm gonna be able to throw up this crazy weight. Like they don't think those other things can affect. And I think it
Mm-hmm.
rolls over in a lot of things. And I think like you're saying that all these training methods, they're different training methods, and some of the top in the world are all doing different things and they're working for them.
Yeah.
And it's like being open to look at those things and try them and experiment until you know what works best for you. That goes for the gym, and that also can go for mental health, where it's like that might work for somebody, this might work for somebody else, but it's like until you know what works for you, you need to figure it out. You need to look into these things and just try them and be open to different things until you figure out what works and what helps you the most.
And keep in mind that what works now might not work later.
Yeah.
There's even, we had a discussion with Dave Tate, and it was like, well, does the new thing that you're trying, is it actually working, or is it simply the change that's working?
Yeah.
Like maybe just the dip, maybe you did this one so long that you needed to change, and it didn't matter what you changed to, you were going to see results.
Yeah.
And then the same thing with like what in the depths of my depression, what helped me there when I get better, it might not keep helping me. It might help me to this mid level, and then I got to find something else to move past that to the next level.
Yeah.
So it's like I think like the moral of that little story is don't ever get set on one thing and embrace the idea that this goes back to the whole give a man a fish, feed him for a meal, teach him how to fish, feed him for life.
Yeah.
Like, no, I don't want to know the one thing that's going to work. I want to know how to find new things and experiment with things quicker to get better. And I use the same thing in training. I go, the more, if you're trying to get strong, you're always going to have a weak link. The weak link is always going to hold you back. So it's not my goal as a coach to fix that weak link. My goal is to try to, if I work with you and we're going to train together for a long time, my goal is to get you to communicate with me better. So I need you to understand and be able to explain to me that I can find your weak link faster. And if we're in
Yeah.
a seminar or something, I want to teach you to be able to I want to tell you what your weak link is now, but I want you to understand how I found that so that you can find your weak link faster next time.
Yeah.
Because it's always going to be something different. Maybe your upper back is your weak link in your bench. You get it stronger. Okay, now your bench staled out again. Why? Maybe your triceps are weak now. Maybe your anterior delts are weak now. You know, so the faster you can find the weak link, the faster you can keep progressing. And it's the same thing with mental health. Okay, here's what I need to work on now. I have a major problem with this. Okay, well, once you get that better, how do you find what the next thing is to improve to keep getting better?
Yeah.
And keep grabbing the lowest fruit and slowly work your way up the tree.
Yeah. You have to keep reevaluating. You have to keep looking at those things on everything of like what's affecting this, what's affecting that, and why. And then and then be open to change things. It's
Yeah.
and it's not going to hurt to try something different. Like if you like you said, sometimes I put these in there and then I throw it out of my training because it didn't work. But
Mhm.
if it did work and you never tried it, and you would have never known. You're
You
like, oh
don't know
shit,
that.
that does work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even then, keep it in your. I remember having conversations in the hotel, and like Ryan Kennelly would say something, and I'd be like, "Yeah, I did that, and it didn't really work for me, but I'm going to remember that because I might need that later in the future.
Yeah.
That might be the one thing in the future that bumps me past where I'm at that time. Because if it worked for somebody, then it works. It's just at what point and where are you at that it actually works."
When you're so, are there things that you've done like with your mental health on coping wise? Like, there things you've done that you're just like that did not work for me? Are there good ones? Are there good ones that you do that you're like, this definitely helps me, or this has helped me at this point? And then are there really bad ones that you were like, that was a terrible idea. Why did I think that was the right way?
I don't think anything I ever tried was a terrible idea. I almost think everything worked to a certain extent. I think one of the problems when I've kind of always tried to work on my mental stuff. I was fortunate that my dad kind of taught me about visualization and positive mental attitude. And he had me read like Norman Anthony Peele's book, which I totally resisted when I was young, but I think some of it stuck. So I always kind of worked on my mental side, but as I got going, it's you kind of work on some things. I would say the biggest or the worst thing I did was there's parts in my life where I went, oh, dude, I got it. It's done. It's cool, man. I fixed it. Like that was one of the stupidest things that I ever did because I didn't fix it. Maybe it was better, but like there's a couple issues I had that I would think that I took care of and then they pop back up later. And I'm like, oh, you know why this is happening? It's because of that. I thought I dealt with that, but I didn't deal with that. I only got halfway through dealing with it and felt better and quit. But I mean, how was I supposed to know that? I didn't get mad at myself. I'm like, well, how was I supposed to know I didn't deal with it? I don't know until it comes back up. Now I know. But that also changed my attitude to where I pretty much accepted that this is a lifelong thing. Like this is a lifelong process. I'm never going to be done with it. I'm always going to be looking at stuff. I'm always going to deal with stuff. And that's just the way it is. And that's actually a good thing. Like that was one of the things I liked about strength when I look back on it, is it's like, this is a puzzle I never have to worry about solving. It's a puzzle I get to work on the rest of my life because I'll never totally understand all of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that because I call my depression my darkness, and I'm like, I know it's never gonna be gone. Like it'll be there. There'll just be better points, and there are better ways
Mhm.
to figure that out. And always trying to learn my body and how to recognize it before it starts to creep up worse and worse. But so you were saying that you didn't find anything. You didn't really say there was anything bad, but what do you think would be your best way of like if you feel it coming on, or if you can feel like something's off, is there something that you feel helps you the most, or is it
For
different on the
me,
day? Or
making sure to get like going for a walk in the morning is a huge thing for me, even if it's like 10 minutes. Like try to get out in the sun, try to get around some trees, or fortunately I live next to a little bit of open desert and a park, so I can just go walk through the park. That's a big one that helps me going, okay, moving it up my list. So like training, the priority of training drops way down. My nutrition is make sure you eat healthy. Don't eat a bunch of sugar because sugar does not help me. And get out and move, but don't do super strenuous exercise. And then really try to focus. Like most of my depression is revolves around my sleep. So normally if it's creeping up, my sleep's going bad. So then I got to go, okay, when's the next day I can like not have to set an alarm and sleep in a little bit.
Yeah.
And until I can get to that day, I need to try to get my sleep better. I need to back off from things that are going to stress my central nervous system, which is heavy or really intense training. And try to get outside more. And then I really try to pick up like for some reason the term daily affirmations I don't care for because I think a lot of people just say stuff and don't think about it. So there's something about the term affirmation that I don't like, but I mean, I have things that I like to say right now. One of the big ones is just out loud, just go, thank you for everything. I have no complaints. And for some reason, it always makes me grin a little bit. And it's kind of like saying, thanks. Like every experience in my life has been a good one because it led me to here and I'm good with who I am. And I have no complaints is like, listen, the future's going to be better. The future's going to be good. And right now I have a roof over my head and I have a place to sleep and I have food and I have some toys and yeah, life's okay. Sure, I want some more things. I want to do better. I want to expand my business, but right now everything's okay. And all that other stuff's going to happen in the future. So relax. That's
And I
that's a big one for me. And then
okay.
just bringing the subconscious to the conscious. So like when the depression comes on for me, it's really easy to see, or it's really easy to fall into the negative and really hard to see the positive. So I want to make sure that that day I'm really aware of my subconscious. Like the whole kind of the road rage thing, or the other day I was trying to grab all this stuff out of the refrigerator instead of just taking a couple things to the counter. I wanted to grab it all at once. And so I smashed a jar of pepperoncinis and I went, all right, don't let the subconscious, it's just a jar of pepperoncinis, man. You just got to clean it up. No biggie. And I kept myself from letting that blow up. And when you're depressed, how every little thing could just turn into something horrible.
Oh yeah.
I just want to keep that aware of that subconscious and really I mean, I should be focusing on it every day anyway, but when things start to happen and I start to feel the depression coming on, I really try to be aware of all that stuff.
Yeah. I think you definitely need to your your mindset and where your thoughts are headed, keeping an eye on that. And then also like when you talk about learning from the things that have happened, it's like you need to look back on your past and be able to reflect on it, but not dwell on it. Right. Because
Yes.
that when you dwell on something you did in the past and you don't let it go, it's like you can reflect on it and look at it as a learning lesson. But if you dwell on it and let your subconscious start going in that negative route, shit's gonna go sideways.
It's interesting that you just said that. Because I was thinking that as I was responding to the last comment, that was in my head that I wanted to talk about that too. I mean, I would say one of the biggest things to help with my depression and just to help with me being a better person was going, hey, why do I feel like this? And one of the big things with why do I need to go to the gym and beat the crap out of myself to deal with life? The biggest step forward I made in that is going, all right, Chad, you need to get to the root of the problem. Why are you like this? Like, what in your past? Where did this start? Where did this come from? And I really had to kind of go back in my past and start analyzing some stuff And, I grew up in a blue collar family, like I said, where it's almost like you can be angry, you can be melancholy, and well, that's pretty much the emotions we expect you to have. You work
Yeah.
hard, you don't complain, you don't get overly excited, and it's okay to still be angry. And
Yeah.
I'm a very emotional person, probably more emotional than most people realize. So I'm dealing with all these emotions and trying to live up to the expectations of what a man is, in my family and in where I grew up. And that was hard for me. And I think led to some of my frustrations. Well, if the only way I can take this out is anger, then I'm going to go for it. So I fought a lot, got pissed a lot, lifted like a crazy man a lot. And that was some of the stuff that I had to go through back into my past. And, my dad, I my dad's a good dude. He's a really good dude. He's got a great heart. His dad before him was hard. My great grandfather was even harder. And so I grew up with a hard ass father, and I was a sensitive kid. That's not actually the best thing to grow up with. But I kind of had to go back into my past and go, listen, let's review this stuff, Chad. And you took all of this in when you were a kid and when you were a teenager and even when you were a young man. But our brains really don't like settle in until I think we're like in our early 20s.
26 or something.
So I went, okay, here, let's do this. Let's go back and analyze these situations. These memories are still in your past and they're so vivid and they're so clear for a reason. Let's go back and relive these, but let's relive these without the mentality of a child or a young adult. Let's relive this with the mentality of the adult that you are now, which gave me a whole different perspective on some of the stuff that I went through. And it now allowed me to see some of those situations from both sides. And even if there were situations where it was like, yeah, well, I still wish it would have went this way, but I can deal. It's okay. Like I understand both perspectives, and I understand that a lot of times when you really go back and look at it, I'm like, I had the perspective and feelings of a child. But now when I go back and look at it, I go, Jesus, why was I so upset? It wasn't that big a deal.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you kind of feel this weight get lifted off your shoulders. And you're like, well, yeah, it wasn't perfect, but it wasn't what I made it out to be or what I remember it to be. And you just kind of walk away with it with a much different perspective. And you kind of become where it was this little thing that subconsciously nagged at you. Now you're just like, oh, yeah, that wasn't that bad.
I think when you analyze it, you need to detach from what happened, right? And
Yeah.
take out your emotions that you had at the time and what you felt was done to you. Take a step back and look at both perspectives, like you said. So that way you get a better idea. If you can detach and analyze rather than just put yourself in that emotional state again. If you put yourself in that same spot and think about it again, those same emotions are going to come up and you're just going to have that same negative outlook on it. But if you take a step back, detach and analyze, then you're like, you can get a better idea of where you're saying, you're like, Jesus, that wasn't that big a deal. Like
Yeah.
there's times I'll still do it now where if I get frustrated or something in a situation, and then I realize what I'm getting frustrated about, I'm like, all right, detach from the situation, think about it. And then I'm like, fuck, well, that's not that big a deal. And it clears you up in just a second. You're like, oh, okay. And then you could know
Yeah.
what was happening and validate the feeling if it was meant to feel that way. And if it wasn't, you can just let it go.
Yeah. I have back when I worked at a liquor company for a long time, especially when I was lifting heavy, I worked there the whole time because it worked out with my training. And there's definitely times I would get frustrated. I mean, I have ideas and concepts of how to run things. And when it gets ran shitty and that causes more work for me, I get pissed. And there's definitely times where I would get into yelling matches with my bosses. And then I would step away and I would be thinking about it and I'd be like, you know what? I shouldn't have got that upset. And I go, when he said this, I probably should have asked more what he meant because I kind of jumped to a conclusion. And then like later that day or the next day, I'd go in and apologize and go, listen, I still disagree with you, but I go, how I handled myself was not good. I should have asked you this and I should have explained it like this. And I think we could have had a more amicable discussion instead of me getting pissed off.
Yes.
And I think that actually drew a lot of respect from them for me. And every time I did that, it seemed to make the next instance would be a little better. Because at least then I'm owning up to like, hey, I made a mistake, man. But I'm thinking about it and it's given me ideas on how to handle it better next time. Instead of just like a lot of people in that situation will just blow it off.
Yeah.
And just forget about it. And they keep doing it over and over and over. And it's like, you're not changing anything. Like sometimes you got to think, you got to step back and think about it. And then you got to own up to what you did. And it sucks. It sucks to go in and go, hey man, I apologize, dude. I blew up. I shouldn't have done that. But I think that helped me to grow through that too.
Yeah, and it helps build that trust with your boss that they know that you're going to accept things, that you can actually take responsibility for
Yeah.
something. So it gives them a bigger trust in you, and that where they're like, okay, then you can have a better conversation in the future, and it makes that relationship easier. And I think it happens in all aspects of life where people do the same thing. They never take responsibility for it, and then your relationship can go to shit because
Mm-hmm.
you weren't able to accept what you did, and then any other interactions you have are always just going to go negative because it's always in the back of their mind, well, they always think like this, they always think they're right, and they're never going to accept anything I say, and it's just like it's a hard way to live. But
Yeah. I think that goes back to, and I don't know where this would fall into the mental health end of it, but I think, especially today, people don't want to take responsibility for anything, especially their own feelings. You know, we're a lot of people, I've seen a lot of people that want to blame everybody for everything. And so then they go through life miserable and they don't feel healthy. They feel bad. They're stressed, everything because they blame everyone for everyone. Well, he made me mad. Well, he hurt my feelings. Well, he did this. And I'm very big on no, nobody made you feel anything. You did. You chose to feel that way, or you allowed yourself to feel that way. They did what they did. And I actually, I had a divorce and I had a hard time with the divorce. Afterwards, I pinpointed a lot of the issues to communication. So I started going really deep into studying communication. And one of my biggest struggles was the whole feeling thing. Because in my head, I went, if somebody comes up and punches me in the face, that person made me mad. And it took me a lot of sitting and contemplating and meditating on that thought before I finally grasp it. Like, no, that guy punched me in the face. He didn't make me mad. He literally punched me in the face. That's it. That's all he did. At that point, it's up to me to go, did that really hurt? I mean, I've been punched in the face and it don't bother me. Like, did that really hurt? How do I want to feel after he did that? And how do I want to respond to it?
yeah, I don't remember who it is,
Literally
but
was
somebody,
my responsibility.
yeah, somebody said, I cannot remember who it is, but it's nobody can hurt you unless you let them. Is
Yes.
how they, it's like the emotion, your reaction to something, your emotion is your emotion that you let happen from whatever the situation was. And a lot of people, to grasp that, like when I heard it, I was like, holy shit, like that's deep. Like if you really think about it, like when you get mad or angry or frustrated or any of these other emotions towards somebody for something, it's like, okay, they did their action. You can't control that. You can control your emotion, and you're the one that let them hurt you. And it's like, it's hard to accept that sometimes and hard to kind of calm yourself down from it, especially if they did something that can really piss somebody off. But
You're
when you look at
actually
it that way,
giving them control over you.
yeah,
And I'm a control freak. So that's probably the one that really got me, is going, whoa, 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 wait a minute. I'm not giving nobody control over me. Fuck that.
yeah,
And it's the same thing. So the guy punches me in the face. I can feel however I want to feel. And I can respond however I want to respond. Which would probably be like, oh yeah, I'd punch him back in the face, probably knock him cold, and then be like, all right, I'm going on with my evening. Like,
yeah,
I'm not going to let him make me mad. It's the same thing with the. I think about that when if somebody cuts me off or something. Am I going to let him ruin my day? Am I going to give him control over my emotions? Hell no. I'm going to do that. I don't want to
yeah,
be mad. My day is going great. I don't need that to mess my day up.
yeah. I had to have that conversation with my 12-year-old daughter the other day of she was frustrated with kids at school and everything like that and the way things were going. And I sat down and talked to her and I was like, you can't let them control your emotions. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I understand that you're getting frustrated with it and everything like that, but I've been there and I've done that where somebody cuts me off and it ruins my fucking day. I'm pissed for 4 hours. Like, oh man, should have pulled that guy over, beat the shit out of me. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, and it's like when you're able to just accept those things and be like, no, like you're not going to ruin my day. Or when somebody gives you the finger because of something in traffic or things like that, it's like, why? Why let that ruin your day? It's that was out of your control. Control your emotions. You can do that. You can't control their action.
Well, if you believe in manifestation, like that could set your whole day off. That one thing could make you piss you off, put you in that mode where you're drawing other bad things to you. And then it's like that one thing leads to something else, which leads to something else, which leads to something else. And your whole day is just shit when you could have just stopped it and said, no, I'm not going to feel upset about this. I'm not going to be pissed off about this. But also, you telling your daughter about that again is you taking the knowledge that you've gained and helping somebody else to hopefully be ahead of where you're at. I was down visiting my great nieces not too long ago. And me and my mom talk a lot. I love my mom. And I talk about all this stuff to her all the time. And so one of my nieces, they're like 2 and 4. So they're not going to understand this at all. But I still like the concept of it being introduced to them at this age. So my one runs in and she's like, Riley made me mad and did this and that. And my mom goes, which is their great grandma. My mom goes, no, she didn't make you feel anything. You chose to feel that way. Now, what she did was not right, and she's going to be punished for that. But she did not make you feel anyway. And I know that 4, she's not going to grasp that. But I'm like, hey, you never know what little bit starts sinking in right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Those little things that you never thought could affect you and the way they're taught to you that you never realize. Kind of like when you're talking about having a hard father and same thing. Like, I mean, that dad wasn't like super hard or beat, but it was like, same thing. His dad was hard. And when they have that, you build from that as well. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you're built with these things of this is how you react. These are which you don't ever realize. Like I realize that a lot of my temper things and things blowing up like that, I learned from my dad.
Mm-hmm.
My dad, same thing. He's got that short fuse and things piss him off. And even inanimate objects, like I did it too. Like trying to fix a sink and it's not going where you want to go, and then you just get pissed off and you rip it out of the fucking sink and you're like, I'm buying a new sink. Fuck this thing. And it's like I didn't realize I'd learned that from my father, and I watched my brothers do it, and I'm guessing that he learned it from his father.
Mm-hmm.
And the actions. And it's like, now I'm trying to break that cycle, because the one goal as a parent is to make my child less fucked up than I was. That's how I'm
Yes.
like, as long as I can
Yeah.
do that, I
Yeah.
kind of won. But
Well, what's funny, I had a conversation one time with my buddy because we were talking about this, and he was working on a pipeline. And he was telling me about he was trying to get this last bolt in and get done. And like he just couldn't, it wouldn't thread and it wouldn't go. He's getting pissed off, getting madder, it won't go. And then finally he just said, fuck it, and walked away. Went and got a drink, had a snack, came back, nut screw right on the bolt. And I'm like, isn't it interesting how our attitude can even infect or affect like inanimate objects? Like that bolt didn't change. There wasn't nothing different in it. But because he was already frustrated and pissed off, it made it way harder than it needed to be.
yeah.
And I think a lot of times that's, that's all in our control. And that's great. Like it's great that that's in my control. I love that that's in my control. Maybe it took me a while to embrace that, but I like the fact that I'm in control of my feelings. I like the fact that I'm in control of things are going to be harder if I'm in a bad mood. Like being in control is great. I wonder how many people out there are dealing with anxiety and dealing with depression and dealing with these emotions and these mental states. And a lot of the times it's because they don't feel like they're in control. I mean, I can't say for sure that, hey, my depression's worse when I don't feel like I'm in control. But I can say that the more control I took and the more control I accepted, the better my mental issues got.
I think that, yeah, I think that's a huge thing, is that when you realize those things and can look at them, because like you were saying, the happier you are on the platform and the happier you are in training, the better it goes. And I think it
Mm-hmm.
relates into everything in life. Like when you're happy and things are going good, things seem to be going great. And then when you start to go downhill and you're looking at everything negative, then it just seems to spiral into
Yeah.
this, and it's feeding off itself, kind of like when you're happy and up. And so that's why I'm like, anybody could feel like they could say you're manic or bipolar. It's just like, no, it's like I'm sleep deprived, and these emotions, I'm feeding off my own emotion, and it's taking me down this way, or it's taking
Mm-hmm.
me up or down. And I don't think people think to realize that, and that they need to fix those things and analyze it. But
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people that go, well, I'm depressed. I have depression. There's nothing I can do about it. And I'm like, well, I mean, I deal with depression. There's probably something chemically in my brain that doesn't quite work totally, but it's not like I have no control over it. I do have control over it. I know for a fact I have control over it. I can't completely make it go away, but I can make it better. At my at my worst, I'm in tears. I'm sitting at home. I got my gun loaded with hollow points. I got it to my head. I got the safety off. I got pressure in the trigger. And I start running through the people in my family. Because I'm like, how is this going to affect? Like, my dad is tough. He'll get through it. My brother's tough. He'll get through it. My mom, it'll be hard, but she knows I deal with this stuff. And finally, I got to my niece. And I was like, at that time, my nephew, I'm like, he's so young, he won't even remember me. But my niece was at that age where I go, this is going to be something that will be with her whole life. And I went, I can't do that to her. Like, I can't do that. And that was when it was kind of like, all right, shit, or get off the pot. Like, pull the goddamn trigger or stop. Like, you need to make up a decision. And I went and actually, I wrote a training log for Elite FTS. And I sat down and I wrote this long letter of what I was feeling. And that was the first time, like, I stared at it for a while, hit enter, and in the morning, I'm like, that's it. I lost all my sponsors. Like, dude, people are going to think I'm insane. And the response was the complete opposite of that. But I ended up I was talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about this, and he goes, it wasn't your niece that stopped you from doing it. He goes, it was you. And I'm like, no, I stopped because I couldn't do that to my niece. And he's like, no, 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 it was you. You stopped it. You made the choice. And I'm like, no, I did it because I couldn't put my niece through that. And he's like, you're not listening to me. He's like, that may have been a reason, but you chose to not do it. And it took a while for that to sink in. And it was like, yeah, it's true. Like, so I did have a choice. No matter how bad it was, no matter how horrible it was, there was something inside of me that didn't let me go through with it. And so I think that's something that I want to always portray to other people is like, stop feeling like you don't have a choice. Stop feeling like you have depression. This is life. No, bullshit. You have depression. It's something you got to deal with. You still have control over it. You still have control over suicidal stuff. Like, you always have power. It may be harder for you. It may be harder to fight through it, but you still, in the end, you're the one that makes a decision.
Yeah.
Whether you're lucky enough to have it or like people in my family wake up in the morning and they're like happy. Like when I was a kid, it drove me nuts because like my sleep was bad. I didn't know it at the time. But like I get up and everybody's like yapping and talking, and I'm just like, and they would all, I got teased so much for being crabby in the morning. And I'm like, I hated it. They're all happy as shit. How the hell are they happy? Like, because I thought everyone slept like I did. But so we all deal with different shit. But in the end, it's still up to us to make the decisions we want. We can choose to let those things hold us back and be an excuse for why we're not successful, or we can choose to work through them and past them and still be successful.
Yeah. I think it just reflects too on your character that you're able, even in that moment, to register other people. Like, so I've
Mm-hmm.
had 3 suicide attempts, and the times that I've done it, I didn't even register to me. I didn't even think about how it would affect people in my life. And as I look back on it, it's something I'm like, Jesus, like, and it was because I just let it spiral so far that I didn't care. And I didn't have that character to be like, what's this going to do to them? How is this going to affect somebody else? And to show that you had that thought process. For one, you made the choice and you showed that no, I can do this. I can get past it. But like, I'm like, I look at the things that I'm like, what kind of person was I being in general that wasn't even a thought of mine? Like I'd fed so much into the negative that I didn't even think about it. I didn't, I didn't. And then obviously it didn't work. And I've grown from that and learned and hoping that I can share these things that like there are better ways than I know it's hard and you get into those spots, but you need to decide for yourself on how to live with this and how to deal with it correctly.
Well, I think it's definitely like, I mean, say I hadn't made that choice right then and I kept pushing, maybe the next time 6 months later might have been the time where I didn't think that.
Yeah.
It's hard to say because it is a progression. And that's where I think if anybody who's listening to this that suffers from any of this stuff, start getting a handle on it now because it's only going to get worse. One of the things that scared me about being diagnosed as bipolar was, I don't know if you remember Adam Ant. I don't know if you're that old enough to do that. Uh, it's
I
like
don't
an
think I do.
80s English singer, and he started doing these crazy videos that were hugely successful and stuff. But he ended up being bipolar. And when you're bipolar, there's actually a documentary about him. Damn it, what is it? Something to Prince or so. I'd have to look it up. But if you look up Adam Ant and bipolar and documentary, and when I watched that documentary, I'm like, oh my God, that's me. Like, that's me. Like, I don't want to end up like that. And Because if you're bipolar and you let it get out of control and you go through a bunch of like mania phases, there's a point where you're never coming back. Like you're changed forever. Whatever it does to your brain, it changes you. And that scared the hell out of me. So that was all part of me like going, I need to not let this go. And I think depression's the same thing. If you keep letting it go, it's eventually going to get there. So if you do deal with this stuff, make a goal right now to start getting control of it and start figuring it out. I remember one time though with the suicide, I would like to write a book. And I would like to write a book for people that deal with it, but I would also like to write a book for people who are affected by it. Because I really feel for people who are affected by suicide, because if you've never been through it and you have a loved one that does it, man, the emotions and feelings that it sends you through have got to be crazy. I mean, because I've had people contact me and go, "Hey, I'm sending this to my family member or friend or whatever." And so you kind of get to talk to them and you're like, what it leaves these people with is so horrible. These people are left going, what should I have done? I should have done more. This is my fault, which is crazy because it's not. And I actually had when Chester from Lincoln Park killed himself. I had a friend at work come up to me and he's like, did you see that bullshit? He's got kids. What the fucking piece of crap? And I go, whoa, 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 dude. Wait a minute. You don't get it. Like, you don't understand it. And I'm like, all right, man, just uh, give me an hour and come back and talk to me about this. And so I'm driving around at work in my forklift and I'm trying to go, how the hell can I explain what this is like? Because I had a friend in high school commit suicide and I refused to go to his funeral because I thought it was a chicken shit way out. Little did I know, life was going to drop kick me in the face and let me see what it was like. So I'm driving around and I'm thinking about it. And finally I come back and talk to him. And I'm like, we got yellow lines painted on the floor. I go, you see that yellow line? It's probably 6 inches wide. I go, could you walk on that yellow line? He goes, oh yeah, piece of cake. I go, okay, so it'd be easy. Like, it's wide enough that you could easily do it without falling off. He goes, oh, for sure. There's no way I'd fall off. I go, okay, imagine I put a beam that same width running across a 40-story building to the other 40-story building. Could you just get on it and walk across it? He's like, fuck no, I wouldn't do that. I go, why not? You just told me without a doubt that you could walk across that. He's like, yeah, but it's not 40 feet in the air, 40 stories in the air. I go, what's the difference? He's like, I don't know. I go, well, okay, think about this. You're saying you would never commit suicide. What if everything in your body that's telling you you can't walk across that beam was telling you you could and you should? And he's like, huh. I go, yeah, when these people are in this position and they go through with it, they're in such a dark place and it's so deep. Their body is literally going, do it. This isn't going to stop. It's never going to stop. You need to do this. This is your only way out. And you get so focused on it. It's like everything in your being, everything in the world around you is telling you there's only one way to stop this pain. And I go, so try to imagine that when you hear about somebody commit suicide. Like, yeah, I would wish that they would think about their kids and what's going on and think about their wife. But they're in such a place that they can't even see that anymore. All they know is how bad they hurt, and all they see is darkness. And no matter how much they love their kids, they can't feel it. I
Yeah.
remember there was a time where my sister would call me up and go, your niece and nephew want you to come over and play with them. And I'm like, man, I'm not doing good. I'm not doing good at all. And she's like, okay, but they want to see you. And there's times where I went, all right, I'm going to go over there and I'm going to act happy and I'm going to play with them. And like, I remember running around the front yard with him one time. My mom came out and she's like, "You're not doing good, are you?" And I go, "No, not at all." But I'm like, they're little. They can't understand this. All they know is they want to play. They want to see me. So you go do it. But that wasn't at my deepest. That was where I could still think about other people. But even then, it was hard for me because I knew how much I loved them and cared about them, but I couldn't feel it. It was my logical brain going, "Chad, you don't feel it, but I know you love them. I know you want to be around them. So even though you don't feel it, let's go do it." But it gets darker than that. It gets to a point where you don't feel that. You can't feel that. And I think that's something that people can't understand. And
Yep.
then a lot of people, like, when, I don't know if you remember Dave Mira, but he was like the BMX guy, like any form of BMX. He was unbelievable. And he ended up killing himself. And nobody could believe it because Dave Mira is the life of the party, man. Dave Mira is cracking everybody up. Dave Mira is always happy. And I go, yeah, think about it. I go, if you have that persona and you're in a society where you don't talk about depression, you don't talk about suicide stuff, and you have this persona for being this guy that's happy and great and the life of the party, and now you feel like you have to be that person all the time. But deep inside, you don't feel anything like that. How hard is it to keep that act up? And I think about that too, because I was, during my worst, I was single and I could go home and be alone. Or I could go, I used to go out in the mountains and I just sit on a cliff on a mountaintop for hours, just listen to the wind, because that calmed everything down for me. But imagine you have a wife that you can't tell and you have kids that you can't tell. You got to put on this front 24/7. How much more is that going to take out of you?
Yep. Yeah, it's like you're draining yourself even more,
Mm-hmm.
faking it, and it's making it harder, but you don't know what to do with it. And I try to explain it to people that don't have depression. And I'm like, you don't get it. Like when it wraps you up like that, your logic, like you're saying, where you're like, I had to use my logical brain, which is they're too, it's like, it's telling me I love them and I need to go do this. That goes out the window sometimes. It's just
Yeah.
not there. You get devoured by that darkness. And it's just like, you try to fake it, but if you don't deal with it, it'll just devour you like that, where you get
Mm-hmm.
to that place that seems like your only way out.
And there's the fear, like in some of my deepest points, even then I would try to tell myself, "Chad, you've got through it before. You've got through it before." And then that little negativity would come in and go, "What if this is the time you don't? What if it never gets better? What if this is the time it stays?" And you're like, I can't deal with that. I can't do that. And that's, for me, it was at probably my deepest point, which was around when I finally came out and wrote about it. I knew enough to go, I can never get here again. Like, no matter what happens, I need to find a point where I go, that's it. This now is the main priority in my life, to not let this get any worse. I go, because I can't keep coming here. Because if I keep coming to this point, eventually I'm not going to make it back.
Yeah.
And that
And so
was where it's like,
that's
all right, what can I do? What are my triggers? Trying to figure out, the sooner I can read this, the sooner I see that I'm going down the hill, the easier it's going to be to stop it. And like, so it's like trying to trigger out your own triggers. And for me, it would be sleep going. And then it would be, you'd kind of feel like there's some days where you just wake up and you're like, you just feel negative, and it's harder and harder to see the light. And then like, it's hard for me to even describe like what it is, but I know it. Like I'll just wake up in the morning and I'm like, yeah, okay, something's going on. All right, pay attention. And I can't even really put it into words. It's like something in my brain. Like I can't fight because I wake up tired and sore every day. But there's this thing that's in my head and I can't put it in words, but I know it. And when I wake up and I feel that, I go, okay, priorities just changed.
Yeah. Yeah. I think learning those, like you said, is getting the mindset of if I keep going there, I'm not gonna get back out. I'm not gonna be able to pull it out. And learning all those triggers and being open to figuring out how to cope with those and what works for you. And no matter what, that you can catch it before you get to that point. Because I talked to one of my high school teachers on here he deals with kids all the time. He says that for the past 20 years, they average one kid a year that commits suicide, that he loses a student or a friend because some of them he's close to, and he's just like, I don't know what to do. And he's like, I, and he's same kind of thing. He lost a kid, one of his best friends in college, and he's like, he was the life of the party. He was
Mm-hmm.
making everybody laugh. Nobody knew, and he's like, he called me that night and didn't say anything. He just wanted to talk. And then after he got off the phone with me, he went and did it. He's like, and it's like if people don't know that you're there, or if you don't feel like there's somebody there to listen or to support that can help you through these things, you're going to keep following that path, or you need to figure out your own ways of working with it where you see these and notice them and have that learning curve to be like, I got to stop it before I get there. And I got to
Mm-hmm.
do the things that work for me.
I've the things I've read lately, and I was actually just talking to one of my clients. She was with some of her friends that have other teenage kids and talking about how they're on antidepressants and all this other stuff. And I really think that the it's getting worse for kids. And I think a lot of that is our society. I think we've taught children from a young age now how to distract themselves, and distracting doesn't fix anything. You're always looking for a distraction. And if you're looking for a distraction from depression or suicidal thoughts, it's like a drug addiction. You're going to keep needing more and more and more until eventually there is nothing that can distract you from it. And then we teach kids in school, let us solve your problems. Like if you have an issue with somebody, don't take care of it yourself. Go to the teacher. Let the teacher fix it. So I feel like we're teaching kids to be helpless. And just think, I mean, I try to put myself in their position to go, man, if I was growing up with, just look at your phone or watch these cartoons or play these video games, and now there's a problem, I need to go talk to somebody else about it. Like I would end up feeling helpless. And then if I had these issues to deal with, like I could see where you could just give up.
Yeah.
Like instead of teaching kids that like, listen, you don't want to distract yourself with this stuff. You need to spend some time to just think. Like there was a comedian the other day talking about mindfulness, and he was like, when I was a kid, nobody talked about mindfulness. When you're waiting for the bus, you had mindfulness. When you went to take a shit, you had mindfulness. He goes, I can't remember the last time I took a shit without playing on my phone. Like, I mean, nobody ever stops and thinks anymore. And then instead of boys, like, let them have a little scuffle. Like, let them deal with their problems. Let them learn how to do that. And then when these things happen that aren't even open to talk about, at least they have some skills to solve their own problems. At least they, instead of distracting themselves all the time, they can go, wait a minute, maybe I need to think about this. Instead of spending time distracting myself, maybe I can work on this problem. And then, of course, I think we need to keep working on the taboo of talking about this stuff. And that's an interesting one too, because being on social media and being as open as I am about everything, I've had like girlfriends and stuff that hate that. They don't want nobody to know nothing about their life except what they want to portray in social media.
Yeah.
Which again, there's another one. Kids are watching social media. My friends are happy. My friends are going here. My friends are doing this. Like everybody posts everything that's awesome that they're doing on social media. And all these kids are watching social media and thinking that these falsehoods are reality. You know, just because people post everything that's good doesn't mean there isn't bad shit going on. Most of the time there is. And that's like on my social media, I try to post the good and the bad. Like I may be doing good and post a really positive video. I may be having a bad day and I'm like, hey, sometimes you have these days. Here's how I'm going to get through today. Because I don't want people thinking that it's all peaches and cream. Like we all deal with good and we all deal with bad. And I think if we were all more open with that, people would be more open to do it. And I mean, if you're dealing with depression and you think all your friends' lives are golden, are you going to come out and say anything? Hell no.
Yeah, they're portraying this perfect life they have, and then it has that negative effect on other people where they're like, "Ugh, well, they must not deal with this fucking shit. Like, what's wrong with me?" It's like, no, they do. They want you to think that. And I mean, I did it where when I first got social media, all I did was post lifting videos and me working out and me looking lean. And everybody's
Mm-hmm.
probably like, so nobody knew the things that I was going through because even at the time, so my ex-wife, when I told her I dealt with depression, she called me a fucking liar. She's like, "You,
Yeah.
there's no way you could deal with that. Like, look at you and look at these things and the way you carry yourself and portray it." And I'm like, and then I was just like, fuck it. So I closed myself off. I'm like, I'm not going to tell people these things because people
Yeah.
obviously don't think like this. They don't have that narrative. Maybe there's something wrong with me, and then it cycled into worse things. And it's like, if we're all honest about it and can tell people today's a rough day, like fuck, but I'm gonna get through it. I do this, and people can be like, oh, okay, yeah, somebody else has that bad day. Like the people that have come and talked to me about this podcast so far are big guys at the gym that like come up and are like, dude, like I love what you're doing because I thought I was alone.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing you were saying earlier, where like they're like, my wife doesn't even know I'm going through these things right now. And it's like, really? The person you're supposed to care most about you? And I'm like, sometimes I understand it because I'm like, when I did that, I got shut down and told I was a liar. And I was like, Jesus, I'm not doing that again. But
Yeah. Yeah.
so,
That's why I try to tell people, I go, it was amazing when I first came out with it, the responses I got. I mean, there were some bad responses, but to be honest with you, the amount of bad responses were so minimal, I can't even remember them. It was way more positivity, even to people that didn't understand it, or the people that would message me and they're like, dude, I have no idea what you're talking about. I've never dealt with any of that. But dude, it was cool that you talked about it. And if there's anything I can do, let me know. Like there was almost hardly any negative response to it, which was really surprising because a lot of people are afraid to talk about it and afraid of that negativity. And it's like, but again, you're assuming you don't know how people are going to respond. Why are you making an assumption before you even know? And then again, I think that goes back to worrying about what everyone else does. We need to stop that. We need to stop. Like, okay, social media is out there. So what? We'll understand that it's all bullshit and don't pay attention to it. And that's hard. And again, this goes back to sleep. When I don't sleep, when my sleep's really worse, I find myself getting sucked into shit. Like if I sleep good, I can scroll through social media and I don't give two shits.
yeah,
If my sleep's really bad, I scroll through social media and I'm like, fuck, my life sucks.
yeah,
And then I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, Chad, what the hell? And I could see, I'm like, well, no wonder you slept like crap and your mentality's off today. So you're nowhere near as positive as you normally are. And you're struggling to keep that positivity. And it's like, that's where I go back to people. If you can sleep, please sleep 8 hours a night.
Yeah.
Like be in bed 9, get 8 hours of sleep. Trust me, it will change your life.
Yeah.
But like the same thing we talked about with the people that are like, oh, that person's on steroids, or that person has genetics, or that person, like, stop comparing yourself to them and just, what does it matter? Like, just be happy for what they accomplished. And if you're trying to accomplish something like that, odds are they're probably a pretty cool person and they'll help you out.
Yeah.
Like, I've only known a couple of top power lifters or top strength athletes in my life that were kind of assholes. The
Yeah.
vast majority of them will talk to anybody. Hell, most of them are happy. They're like me. They're like, dude, you're a fan of mine? Dude, I'm honored
Yeah.
that you're a fan. I'll
Yeah.
help them out however I can.
Yeah. And I think that with that too, like how you say like the biggest guys in the gym and the most powerful people want to help. And it's like, but you get negativity from the keyboard warrior who's like doesn't they're like, well, fuck 225, look at your back. Like you get shit talked by people who can't do that because they want to hate on you. The people who
Right.
accomplish these things generally for the most part, and that's what I'm learning too, is that they want to help. Like
Yeah.
they learn these things and they're like, yeah, that's awesome. And I'm glad you're a fan. Like they have a better mentality about it. They don't have that negative of I didn't have this. It's like they've done accomplishments that they love and they're proud of, and they're glad that they kind of inspired you in a way and want to be helpful. Like,
Well, here's an interesting thought about that. Most of the really big, gigantic, scary, monstrous people that I know have horror stories in their past. And one of the things that motivated them to get bigger and stronger were these stories, getting picked on as kids or being chubby kids. Or it's easy to come up with the concept that if I get bigger and stronger and badder, I don't have to worry about this. But the irony of it is, on that, somewhere along that journey, they realize that, wait a minute, I'm bigger, badder, and stronger, but I still feel exactly the same. And then they start these journeys to work on those problems and issues, and they become better people. And now they're these huge, gigantic, I don't know anyone would be scared of anybody, but I mean, I do see where some people are like, oh my, because people are scared of me and I don't understand why, but they're like, dude, this guy's huge and he's mean looking, he's growling all the time. Most of those guys are the nicest guys in the world because they've been on the other end of the spectrum as well.
they have that understanding.
Yeah. And they understood that, listen, I got bigger and stronger, but you know what? I still felt the same way. It didn't help me with my shyness. It didn't help me with the names that kids called me when I was little. It didn't change anything. I'm still the same person.
He's putting that band-aid on the shark bite, like you said.
Yep.
Getting bigger and stronger. Thought it was gonna fix me. And it didn't. And that's what I try to tell people. I'm like, I did it for a long time. Like people, and I'm not even that big. Some people are like, dude, you're scary. You're intimidating. I'm like, dude, I'm not that big. I don't get it. They're like, you just seem like an asshole. And then I talk to you. You're a really nice guy. And I'm like, well, yeah, like sometimes I'm in the gym, I'm just in the headspace. And like,
Yeah.
but if you come have a genuine conversation and ask me, fuck, I'll help you with whatever you want, whether that's in the gym or not. Let's have that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about it.
And again, that goes to people assuming about other people, comparing and assuming, and like, you don't know that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of lessons that come out of the gym. I think everybody, and sports in general, I think we really need to push sports for young people too. I think we need to get back to doing physical. There's a big tie for me between the mental and the physical, and they go
Yeah.
hand in hand. Like, you're not going to get super big and crazy strong without having some mental strength.
Yeah.
And most people that are really strong mentally understand that there is some level of physical. Like, and the more, as we learn more about quantum physics and stuff, it's not just the mind. I mean, we've found research that we store memories in other parts of our body, and other parts of our body can affect our mind. So like we need to have a balance of mental strength and physical strength.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree there, especially with, I think sports has a huge development on kids. And I think that that's one of the reasons I was able to beat some of the things was I was able to have kind of a companionship with a team and have some
Mm-hmm.
sort of responsibility to them. I felt like as a team, I'm part of this team. Like I need to be better for them and everything like that. And then it taught me ways to push myself that I like to build that mental toughness. You're not going
Mm-hmm.
to get a mental toughness if nothing ever happened to you or if you don't push your boundaries. And I think that teaches kids, and especially like I'm not a huge fan of the participation awards. Like,
I hate them.
it's
I
like,
can't stand them at all.
yeah, it's like you just then you don't get the sense of accomplishment. Like I understand that you want them to feel, but like you need to do that in other ways, not give them an award for showing up. It's like
Yeah.
so the kid that didn't put his heart, blood, sweat, and tears into it gets the same thing as the dude who's been throwing 20 hours a week into training and wanting to be part of this team and be better. It's like
Yeah.
you're
So you teach
rewarding
you
the kid that
teach
didn't do anything.
you teach the lazy kids they're going to get something, and you
Yep.
teach the kids that do work that it doesn't really benefit you to do work.
Yeah, I could do the same amount of work as them and get the same thing. Like, why am I doing this?
I often think with some of the young people, and especially because I train young kids too, and to see the excitement of them, like to see them go through the struggle and sometimes the embarrassment, and then finally hit that lift or start getting stronger, like to the look on their face and how excited they get. I think there's a lot of young people out there who don't know what it feels like to be successful through hard work. I mean, I even laugh to this day. I had part of my fence blew down the other day. And because of my blue collar upbringing, I've pretty much done everything at some point. So, like, I went out and new post holes, rebuilt my fence way stronger than the original people that built it. And I'm like, yeah, it feels good, man. Like, there's something about putting in some hard work and effort and that feeling that you can't get that feeling any other way. And even if there's something on my Jeep or something, and I'm like, man, I'm not sure how to fix that, but you know what? Somebody else can do it. I can do it. So I'm going to get on the internet and I'm going to watch a YouTube, and you get done and you're like, I don't give a shit. This might have been simple for a mechanic, but I had no idea how to do it and I got it done and it's fixed right. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't think kids know that because we don't ever push them to achieve anything. And I'm surprised how many young people there are that are like, they'll give something one try and go, nah, I'm no good at it. I'm like, yeah, so what? Like you're only going to
How
do
do you?
things you're good at? Like you're
Yeah.
never
How do you
going to
expect to get
get
good?
better at it?
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of kids out there that don't have any idea what it feels like to suck at something, to work your ass off and then get good at it.
Yeah. No, I think that's I mean hits nail on the head there. Like if you're if you're always comfortable and you never push that comfort zone, you're never gonna grow.
Yeah.
And so that's what like if you suck, if you're like, I'm just gonna give it up. Cause I same thing as you. It's like something goes wrong. I'm like, fuck, I can fix that. I can
Yeah.
figure it out. Same thing. I'm like, YouTube's here now. It's fucking great. I don't even have to call somebody. I'm like, something's leaking on the sink. The furnace isn't working right. Shit, I can do that. And it's just like, I think people are losing that because it's like they like, "Ugh, I don't know how to do that. I'm not comfortable with it. Fuck it. I'm not gonna try. But
Mm-hmm.
so
And that's a seriously sad thing. I mean, I think society's taken a bad turn. And I mean, you take that kid that's not willing to try anything, and now you put him inside. He goes to school on a computer. He plays video games. He texts his friends, but doesn't talk to them in person. He has no idea what it's like to work. Say he starts getting depression. And they take him to the doctor. The doctor's like, well, you have depression. The kid goes, oh, I have depression. I guess that's it. Like, is he going to have any urge to fight through it? Is he going to have any urge to go, you know what? I don't want that medication. I think I can handle this.
Yeah.
And I'm not against medication. Like, there have been times
No.
where I was dealing with some bad suicidal tendencies, and I would go into my doctor and go, listen, here's what I want. Here's the dose. I want it for 2 months. That's it. I go, I need this to get me over the hump, but my goal is to control this. But right now, I made some promises to myself and other people that I would not get to this place, and I need a little boost. So I'm not
Yeah.
against medication, but I think we should do everything we can do to try and fix it without it.
Yeah. No, I agree with that too. Cause same thing. I got on antidepressants for a minute and I wasn't a fan. And I was also stubborn. And I was like, no, I can figure out how to do this on my own. And I know
Yeah.
there are certain times and certain things that that's not the case, but it's like, if you can, why not learn how and be able to control it
Yeah.
on your own?
And push the envelope of what you're capable of before going to something else. Yeah, I agree.
So, okay. Well, we've been recording for a while. Before, at the beginning, I asked if you had time restrictions. I didn't think we'd go for this long, but
Yeah.
I got
We're
I
close
got
to
something
three
going on.
hours,
But
I think.
we are, yeah. I think we're right at that 3 hour mark. So, um, I just like to thank you. And I mean, this I'm not gonna lie, this is probably my favorite episode I've done. You had a lot of great insights, and I just appreciate you taking the time to come on here. And we'll just wrap up with I always ask my guests if somebody could take one thing from this episode, what do you think they should take?
I always get stuck on questions like this. Give me a second
Yeah. Oh, you're
to
good.
think about this. I think the biggest takeaway, I'm going to cheat and I'm going to do a couple. Uh,
That's fine. That's fine.
believe in yourself because, like the placebo effect, our mentality can do way more than what we think it can do. So believe in yourself and stop comparing yourself to everyone else. We all have our own journey. We are all going to take different paths. It's going to take us different time frames. Like that's to me, that's just a waste of energy, man. Spend your energy on yourself and believing in yourself, and one step in front of the other, and you'll get better and you'll achieve what you want to achieve. I snuck three in there, I think.
Yeah. No, no, I think that's a perfect way to do that. And then we'll also end with where can people find you? If they're looking for your podcast or your apparel or your coaching, where can they find Chad Aichs?
I have a Facebook, but I honestly don't do anything on Facebook. It just links with my Instagram, which is just Chad Aichs. My last name's Aichs. My YouTube channel is Courage Barbell, which is a lot of different training advice. And I'm now posting my podcast on YouTube as well, because I finally figured out how to do video and audio for that. Uh, I'm like you, the whole techie thing, I'm still learning. I lift heavy shit and I work with my hands. This techie shit is taking me a while to figure out.
Um,
And then the podcast is Courage Barbell Unlimited, and it's on Spotify, Google Podcast, but I heard they're ending that and going to YouTube, and then it's on Amazon Music. Was on Stitcher, but I think Stitcher's done too. So there's if you go to my Instagram, there's links, or you can just do Courage Barbell Unlimited. Spotify is probably the most popular version of it, and the YouTube. And then I have couragebarbell.com where you can pick up some apparel and stuff if you want online training or video reviews or consultations, anything like that, you can get a hold of me through my Instagram and just DM me off there. And I'm going to get that on the couragebarbell.com, which is just basically the store right now. I have different apparel and stuff, but it helps support the channel and everything. And right now it's just me. So I'm trying to balance all this shit together,
Yeah.
and grow it. And I honestly would like to have, I would like to start like a Discord or something at some point and have like a community thing where people can get on there and talk. Because I did Courage Barbell Unlimited because it's mostly about strength training, and I have tons of like the top lifters in the world on as guests. But it's all so tied in together. And I really take a lot of pride in being as open as I am with my depression and suicide stuff. And it's just the whole thing's all tied together. I'm like, I don't know what name to put on it.
Yeah.
One of my big things is fight for your greatness. So I don't know, maybe I need to go that direction or something, but
No, no, that's good. I think that's good.
everybody
Good
can
plan.
listen and watch and there be part of it and grow with me. Cause I kind of see it as if you first, started watching my lifting at my first couple meets and you got to take that journey to where I became one of the best in the world. This is the same thing here. And eventually at the end of the journey, I have a hugely popular podcast or something.
Yeah. That's a good game plan. I think you have the material to make it out there. And like I said, I've been listening to your podcast for the past few days, getting ready for this, and you've got some great content on there. And like I said, you're very authentic, and it's a good change of you're not blowing smoke up people's asses. You're like, I'm here to talk about the things that work, the things that I know, and be honest about things. And I think a lot of people could take that and run with it. But,
Yeah. That was one of my big things I wanted to even when I first got asked to do my training log, I was like, okay, but I'm going to do everything I think needs to be on that training log,
yeah,
which to me meant what are my hobbies? Like, what do I eat? What do I sleep? What do I deal with mentally along with my training?
yeah,
And it was interesting that as it progressed, Dave would give me feedback on how it was going and stuff. And it was like when I posted my photography, I'd get more hits. When I posted stories about myself, I would get more hits. Like it got to where people didn't really care about my training. They wanted to see all the other stuff.
yeah,
And so that's even when I do my podcast, I try to, I got a couple people scheduled and I wrote a thing to one of them the other day. And it's like, I really want people to learn who you are. Like, so when I have a guest on there, like I want people to know who you are past just your lifting. Like, how'd you get started? How long you been doing this? Why'd you get started? And because I think it's interesting to know who people are. I know when I first made it to the world stage of powerlifting, it was fun meeting people. And not just because I respected them for their lifting and stuff, but who are they? Like it was cool to know who they were and how long they've been doing it and how they got started.
yeah.
And I hope that would be interesting to other people as well.
No, I agree with that because that's I try to do the same thing. I'm like I try to get the story out of you, where what you've done, where you've been, and what led you to where you are now. And so
Yeah.
I know we got, I mean, sidetracked with a lot of things. So we hit a lot of things though in and the things you've dealt with and everything like that. And this is gonna be one that I recommend a lot of people listen to because I feel like there was a lot of insights and a lot of things to be taken away from it. So
Cool. I had fun.
okay, all right, well, yeah. Thanks for coming on, and if you, I mean, ever need anything, let me know. And like I said, keep doing what you're doing. I think it's amazing, and I hope people get the same thing out of it that I do.
Cool. Thank you. I was honored to be on.
Okay, all right, we'll talk to you later.